2020 study session of the Scarborough Community College District Board of Trustees. And note that really this study session is the second half of our retreat, the first half having taken place in August. Having said that, I will ask if someone can, we have an American flag. I signed Dr. Goswami. We can use that to say our Pledge of Allegiance. And ask everybody to, there we go, we got a screen flag. Now we'll begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
And I'll note for the record that all trustees are present, for Trustee Nielsen at the moment. Welcome everyone, including those who from the community who may be joining us this afternoon for this meeting. I would like to say to my fellow trustees before we start again that this is the second half of our retreat, and particularly in light of the long hour, the late hour we went at our last meeting. I'm hoping without objection that we'll be able to finish tonight at about 8 o'clock with a 30-minute dinner break at about 6 or shortly thereafter, depending on what we're discussing, and so we don't break up any particular agenda item. But we have 7 agenda items this evening, and if you exclude the 30-minute dinner break, that would up to about 30 minutes for each agenda item, which I think should be sufficient. So unless I hear objection, that will be our target for tonight to complete our retreat at 8 p.m.
Robert, do you want to form a motion to adjourn at or before 8 o'clock so that we can have it done and then we will have to adjourn?
That would be acceptable.
Okay, I'd like to move to adjourn at or before 8 p.m.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion by Trustee Garland, second by Trustee Parker to adjourn on or before 8 p.m. Hearing no discussion, I'll ask for the A's in favor of the motion. All those in say aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Next item is public comment. We actually have 2 public comments tonight. They both pertain to item 4.7, but one of the commenters asked if she could be heard now because of not being able to wait until we get to item 4.7. So, and that commenter's name is Barbara Smith. And if we could join Barbara Smith at this moment to hear her comments on item 4.7, which pertains to Proposition 15.
Yes, hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, good afternoon. We can hear you. Can't
good
see you
afternoon.
yet.
Oh yeah, sorry, I can't turn my camera on right now.
Okay. So,
My name
go
is Barbara Smith, and I'm part of the SBCC staff. And I would like to ask that the Board of Trustees bring forward a resolution to endorse Proposition 15, Schools and Communities First. If Prop 15 passes, it'll reclaim up to $12 billion a year for California's public schools and services by closing a commercial property tax loophole in Prop 13. It'll exempt homeowners, renters, small businesses, and agricultural land. Opponents of Prop 15 are using scare tactics and saying that Prop 15 will increase property taxes for homeowners, hurt small businesses, and lead to job loss. These are all false. Prop 15 exempts all residential property and small businesses owning non-residential commercial property worth $3 million or less. and even creates tax breaks for small businesses. If Prop 15 passes, there will be an increased investments in roads, schools, parks, and local services, meaning more jobs in areas that desperately need them. SBCC will receive an estimated $6 million in additional funding, which we desperately need right now. So please adopt a resolution of support of Prop 15. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. We appreciate you taking the time to offer your comments on Proposition 15. We will now move on to item 4.1 goals for 20-21. And I note at the start that Trustee Croninger, Trustee Gallardo, and Trustee Haslam worked with Dr. Goswami to incorporate ideas from our drafts and comments from our last meeting, and to come up with a final document that should be acceptable, or at least in such a state that we can have a final discussion on it. We're not going to vote on it tonight because we're not, as a study session retreat, we're not voting on or taking any action on items, but we can discuss it and be well positioned to approve it at our October, I believe it's October 8th meeting. First of all, I just want to say, in my own opinion, is it's an excellent work product. I think it's clear, it's focused, it's brief but yet meaningful, and I think relevant to the times. And with that, I will ask if other trustees have comments. I see Trustee Abood has his hand raised.
Great. Thank you. I think it looks good. I'd have 2 points or questions. The first one is, like, one thing I heard last time, I thought by a lot of trustees, was that we thought the School of Extended Learning wasn't a goal kind of thing to have in here, and more of like an ongoing thing. So just a general question of why we kept that in. And then a second one is for goal 3, the target A, our resolution said anti-racism and equity lens, and we actually had that debate too in our spin-off committee, but it should say both anti-racism and equity, like the resolution that was passed.
And would one of the authors like to respond to that?
Sure, I'll be happy to.
Dr. Haslam.
I certainly have no objection to adding the anti-racism phrase. And in response to your question about goal 4, it was our feeling that the School of Extended Learning was essentially a standalone entity, and we do have some goals for it, which has to do with expansion as well as dealing with issues that have come up and have been presented to us as a board, namely the registration process. So I for one saw no problem with adding it. What we did, just to review, we had 2 columns. One was the goal, and the second column was the activity. And thanks to Dr. Goswami, who suggested the addition of a central category, which is set of targets. What do you really want to accomplish? That's, I think, the major strength or improvement of what you now have before you as compared to what we saw earlier. And we pared it down. We tried to compress without losing anything. And I think we accomplished that.
Any other comments? It's a shy group tonight.
Oh, never
Yes.
mind. I forgot we're not voting. I was going to introduce a motion to pass. Move on.
I would just like to highlight, that some of the targets really give direction to me, long-term direction. So I'm particularly impressed with the target that's on board goal 3 that says that our target is to eliminate all access and achievement gaps. And very few institutions go there because it is almost impossible to do that. But we have kind of set ourselves very high targets, and that basically motivates and guides the institution to try and achieve that. So I just wanted to point that out, that was a bold statement from the part of the board.
And I also like the addition of the target column. I think that gives a lot more meaning to the goals, makes them more meaningful than otherwise. Anybody else have comments before we move on to the next? Dr. Hath?
The first target under goal number 1, balance the budget in 2 years. I think that is a very bold target, and I credit Dr. Goswami with introducing it. So I support it completely, and so did the other 2 members of this wonderful little group, and we're doing that and maintaining a prudent reserve. So again, as Robert said, this is a focused set of targets. You can't read this and say that's kind of ambiguous. None of this is ambiguous. We really tried not to do that.
Very good. I likewise have no objection to adding the phrase suggested by Trustee Abood. And I think it is important to include the School for Extended Learning. It's so important to our community, and it's a major significant function of Santa Barbara City College. Okay. Oh, I see Trustee Croninger has her hand raised. Marcia?
I was just going to comment that the goal number 3, target B, eliminating access and achievement gaps. We've had a fair amount of discussion traditionally about the achievement gaps, but not about the access gaps. So I think it will be interesting to talk about what that means and what the data is that might inform that.
I agree. I agree. Okay. Any other comments? If not, we're ahead of schedule. We'll move on to 4.2, CEO and board roles. And I'd just like to stay at the outset on this. We had some rather detailed document that was attached to the agenda that lists in detail board roles and tasks and CE roles and tasks. I would say when somebody asks you, well, what is the board's role and what is in comparison to the president or CEO's role, I think it's often hard to explain that. Other than to say, well, the board makes policy and the president administers and manages the college. And beyond that, there are numerous gray areas that are addressed in the document that was attached to the agenda. But I think sometimes even that doesn't clearly define it for us. So I'm inviting comments from the trustees on this item. Everybody is
I can't find my hand raised, Robert. Sorry.
oh, okay. Well, wave at me.
Sorry.
Okay.
You know what? I'm normally on the iPad and I'm on the computer, and it's like I don't know how to use the desktop anymore. But Marcia has her hand up, so you go first, Marcia, while I find my.
Mark, you're muted if you're trying to start.
I was going to say, and I think we've touched on this before, that the discussion of board and CEO roles is, I believe, something that comes out of league publications, and those are long and very informative. There's one in general on the roles of trustees. There's another one on our financial responsibilities, and I would always recommend people read those because they're really meaty and talk about some of those gray areas. And I don't think you're ever going to resolve all the gray areas, but there's a lot of information in there that this does not even summarize.
And when you say in there, tell us again what
The California Community College League has 2 publications. I don't have them in front of me. Maybe Veronica does, but you know, they're binders, and they're, you know, well over 50 pages each, I think. Financial responsibility is one for trustees is one of them, and basically trustee responsibilities is another. Really good. So if anyone doesn't have those, I'm sure that Jasmine could get them for us.
Thank you. And is the document that was attached the agenda today, did that come from the same source? It's just a briefer.
Yes,
briefer
it's one piece of a much larger discussion.
Trustee Gallardo.
Thank you. I found it. It's right below all of your names, the raised hand. Yeah, I agree with Marcia. It's always good to get the updated ones. I know Jonathan and I got the updated ones when we went to Sacramento, gosh, 2 years ago. And so this is, yeah, in a sense, Robert, I guess you can think of a synthesis of what's in that manual. I think that for me, what's important about looking at this in this T-chart like this is that we did just that in board support for the CEO in terms of goal setting. And I think that working in this nice small committee in consultation with the CEO, I think was evidence of where the board can be very productive, where we bring our CEO along and we have members of the board working collaboratively with him and her, in this case, him, Dr. Goswami. And so I'm mindful of this because in reality, those manuals that Marcia refers to, over and over again, you'll see there that the Board of Trustees is a lay board, which means, okay, you don't do anything. So then you're like, wait, if we don't do anything, well, what do we do? Because we do a lot. And so it's striking that nice balance of what is it that we want to do as representatives of the community, but we do that all through the CEO. And I just think that my hope and my heart would be that we would continue to develop that relationship with Dr. Goswami. I'm certainly grateful, like Peter said, for his suggestions and helping us think through what would be most helpful to the institution. Because I think that everybody here wants to bring the voice of the community and all the different parts that make up this complex system. So that for me is just the main thing would be the board CEO relationship. That's for one employee. And I'd really like to continue to strengthen that so that we can execute some of the goals we have with the community, really.
Thank you. Any other comments on this important topic?
Well, my abbreviated version of the manuals is that this is a governing board that governs through the development of policy. Policy provides a sense of direction for the superintendent president, and that really defines it for me.
Okay. Dr. Goswami, you're welcome to join us on this, particularly since this pertains to you as well directly.
Yep. I thought it might be helpful to kind of know. I mean, I have looked through all of these bullet points, and kind of identified some where we can probably work a little bit more to streamline it in terms of our relationship. And that might be because I'm new here, so your expectation and my expectation may not have clarified and things of that sort. So the first one that if I just go with the document that have you in front of you, that's been attached to the board agenda. It talks about the on board operations on the part that talks about board support for the CEO. So item there is that define the level of information and support desired for the CEO. So obviously, if I have worked with you for a number of years, I would have by just contact would have known. So I think we probably need to work a little bit on expectation of the level of information. And similarly, from my part, the CEO support for the board, the thing is more about provide sufficient information. And again, there can be arguments about what is sufficient information. So that's an area we probably need to keep working on as we develop this relationship. Then from my perspective, if you look at the page on organizational leadership, I think the area where we probably have work to do, at least I have work to do, is making sure that all district plans are linked. And that typically is always an accreditation standard, that they want all the plans to be internally consistent and linked. And also that the college operations and budgets are aligned with the plans. A lot of times, typically we fall into the pattern of rolling the budget from year to year with incremental changes. So sometimes you lose connection between connecting the budget to the plans. So that is something I'm stating that I'll have to work on over the next couple of years to bring the budget more, if we can improve more into the alignment of the plans. On page number 6 of the document, there is a section on institutional effectiveness, and I think Santa Barbara City does very well in program review, but has not formally or gone down the path of institutional effectiveness review in a fairly robust way, and that's where I think over the next few years we'll have to work on shoring up that part, so that the board also has a sense of from a board's perspective, what do you mean by institutional effectiveness, and what will constitute meeting some institutional effectiveness targets, kind of. So that's area we hope to. I have to work with the board. On the next page, which is page 7, that deals with fiscal affairs. I think one of the things that it clarifies and states very clearly that the board is supposed to adopt policies that require and define standards for these areas, budget assumptions and balanced budgets and adequate reserves and things like that. So there is certainly we have a well-defined policy on reserves. We have policy on budget budget development and budget assumptions and things like that, BP 6200. And right now, the operative standard that the board has used, or the board has given me, is best reasonable estimate. It is not conservative estimate. It is not the most optimistic, most pessimistic, nothing of that sort. It is basically a best reasonable estimate. So if at some point in time, the board thinks that it needs to give different sort of a guidance, then that's something we need to discuss, because right now what I'm bringing forward to you is basically best reasonable estimate, not forecast, because forecast is a different meaning. So that's something for the board to think about from a policy perspective. It'll certainly help, back and forth, because a lot of meetings we go back and forth between, should we consider this or should we consider that? So if that is a part of interest of the board, then we need to talk about it. Similarly, long range revenue projections, we are still operating under our best reasonable estimates. But if you feel as a board you need to ask me to do something differently, then probably we should work on board policy 6200 and see what we can change and how we should change it. And that is the purview of the board, to tell me what is it that I must be using. Let's see. So those are, I think, generally my general observation that if we work on those areas, it will be a good. It will make us function much more efficiently, and perhaps lead to much more better decisions and quicker decisions, and a more informed board. I'll invite any comments you might have on what I've stated.
Trustee Gallardo.
Do you want to go first, Jonathan? I saw your hand go right up.
No, you can go. You're first.
Okay. Yeah, so board policy 6200. So there is that fourth bullet there that says that you will be using the best reasonable assumption. I think given our goals that are soon to hopefully be adopted at our next meeting, it'd be reasonable to say that we probably want this policy to come to us at that meeting so we can look at it and talk about it, because it is going to be difficult, I think, for the college to achieve this aggressive 2-year, balance the budget, maintain reserves, when we're saying, oh, just give the best reasonable. So we maybe should change that language, is my thinking on what you said, Dr. Goswami. And then in terms of the institutional effectiveness with regard to all of our different plans working in tandem together, I'm certainly interested, and I think we all have been, especially as they relate to some meaningful data that we can tie to and say, well, what is the metric that we're looking at and what is our goal? The reality is we've had so much turn and transition and leadership that's been difficult to accomplish, because as a new president comes in and a new interim comes in, things have been put on the shelf. And so everybody's sort of been picking up where that comes in. But in order for us to run at the level of effectiveness to elevate teaching and learning, those plans really do need to work together in tandem. So I would be in support of that. I don't know how reasonable or what time frame you're thinking of. I know that there's different timelines in terms of when we submit the equity plan to the chancellor's office, and then we have our facilities and our educational master plan. So I know that all those plans, at least in my history here, they're all in a different cycle. Perhaps with accreditation coming up and us doing this comprehensive sort of 360 review of the college is a good time, since we're reviewing all of this, and maybe it would help us to look at it all, because we are doing this high level 360 view of the college right now. I don't know, so I guess I'd like to hear a little bit more as to what that would look like and the feasibility of us to do that and do it well. I think, at least I know we've always wanted to do that. We just have never been able to, because we've had such a transition in leadership.
I think it probably doesn't require much more work, because we already have a good system of developing plans for the various areas. But I think we probably need to put a systemic structure in place where annually or every 6 months some review for consistency takes place regarding the plans. Right now, I think. Again, I'm I haven't gone through the full cycle for the entire year, so maybe you already do that, I don't know. But from what I'm observe is that we look at the plans, a little bit in an isolated way.
Mhm.
So at some point in time, we need to have all the plans in front of us and see what are the internal consistencies or inconsistencies between the plans. And I think that level of look at the plans through the governance process would certainly help us a lot.
Okay.
So no, so it is not something that is sinking us or anything like that.
Mhm.
But no, it will certainly be a good thing to do. So I would put more like a year's time frame on that to make because that way you can front load the process also, so that when one group that's developing a plan for, let's say, equity, and they know that it interfaces with some other plans, that if they're making significant changes, that interaction happens at the front end also. So it is more of a structural change you might have to do. That's why about a year's time would be a good target to set.
Okay, that's good. Because I know, Marcia can chime in, but I think that one of our challenges has been, I think at least at the board level, it's never really been clear what data we're using. And so, there's all sorts of data that we use. And as you know, data can be used and manipulated in which way we want. And so I think that also identifying the methodology for these plans and that methodology would be consistent so that we're not, and I don't even know if that's possible because in education, I know it's so complex and we have the data from the chancellor's office and then we have the data from the, I forget the other system that they put together, and then we have our in-house. So it would just be good to know what data we're looking at and what student cohorts we're looking at. And I think that at least that for me has been a really big missing piece. And I know Marcia and I have sat down with Reese, and I think the last time we had the equity plan, we kind of got, a really deep dive into what the institution was doing, but it still wasn't clear in terms of what we were getting from the chancellor's office. So whatever we're using and what makes sense for the college, I guess my request would just be that we identify what that methodology would be and that we're consistent with that methodology so that later when we update it, we're not saying, oh, well, we used a different, way to do this. And then you're not, and I think that's where Marcia will, where you say we're not comparing apples to apples because it seems like we're always changing the numbers. And I don't know, Marcia, if you can chime in. I just remember that that's sort of been our conversations with some of these plans, that it's been difficult to address what it is we're looking at and what our targets are.
So Marcia, maybe you could, since Veronica has invoked your name, you already had your hand raised, maybe you could respond.
Well, I agree that fundamentally all of the plans, and to the extent we can, I think should be data-based decision-making and clarifying which data we're using and hopefully resolving any discrepancies with the chancellor's office would be extremely helpful. The plan I am particularly interested in seeing again is the educational master plan. We have not seen that in a long time, years. And I believe that of the last couple of superintendent presidents felt that it really needed work. It was too narrow. It doesn't cover the broad range of thought process and planning that many other colleges do when they do this kind of plan. So, and under Title V, the board is supposed to approve that plan. I know there have been some amendments, but we haven't seen them. So that I would just highlight that as a plan that is both central and should at some point come back to us for to see where we are with that.
Dr. Goswami, could you address that? When there was mention recently of strategic directions, I was trying to find out where, really in response to a question from Marcia about that, where we had approved recent strategic directions, and I noticed that there was that existed in the educational master plan that was, I believe, approved last December before you were here.
I don't think we approved the educational master plan. There may have been a
I don't think we did, but the college. planning
CPC. you
com-
mean.
Yeah. And
I
so
think-
I'm just curious about the status of that.
Well, I don't think we have started work on the new educational master plan. So and it's the unfortunate use of terms, we instead of using the word strategic plan, we are using for whatever reason, we use the term strategic directions. And that's what came before the board and that we discussed in January, February, and March. And that's what you approved, as opposed to what was approved at CPC in December. So it may have remote connections to the educational master plan, but no, it is basically our version of what should have been the strategic plan. From my perspective, strategic directions is even higher level. That it looks at even longer term. So that now you are intentionally moving the institution to wherever it is you want to go. And strategic plan is basically you take advantage of whatever the external factors, internal factors that you are forcing at this period of time to make it happen. So over the next few months, when we start teasing out the strategic plan from strategic directions, strategic directions will be even broader in terms of where are we going. That will be a more intentional movement of the institution according to what the board feels is the right thing to do for the community.
And Dr. Kegslama, you said in January, February, March, that timeframe, the board reviewed what?
The strategic directions.
Strategic directions.
Mhm.
Okay.
But from my perspective, it was mostly part of a strategic plan.
Okay.
So one example of a strategic plan, strategic direction would be that that the institution will consider residential opportunities. Okay. It doesn't have a time frame. We're going to achieve it next year, year after, but no, we are certainly going to look out for opportunities to make it happen. So that is more of a directional element. And those are the things clearly under the purview of the board, because you reflect the community, and that's what I have signed up to implement.
Okay, well, thank you for that explanation. Trustee Abood, do you have a comment?
I think, yeah, I mean, what was just discussed, I think is a good conversation. And what I'm gonna bring up is similar, but it's our policies themselves. Because, these documents are one kind of policy, strategic directions are another kind. I guess our goals are another, but our policy manual, or the board policies we have posted on the website, there's something that I think has always been confusing to me, or I guess it's confusing and or not enough support for the board, is we don't really have a way to develop new policies or just a structured. I know we have a policy on it and we worked on that not that long ago, but we've talked not that long ago about having a policy about relationships with students. How do we do I write that and present that to the superintendent to go off? Just having a system to produce policies and to get them through the process in a timely way, get them discussed, and just something like that. I think we need more support there and more of a focused way to do it, especially for saying that's the board's job, and we want to have more clear policies. And what we're doing in the task force for the anti-racism review of the policies, I think is, going to edit and some policies that need editing and create new ones that need to be created. And I think that's a really awesome process. I don't know if we always need to do that for every kind of lens. Maybe we do. I'd support that. It'd take a while, but I think it would make it stronger. But also just new ideas as they come, a way for us to engage with you the right way and actually get them done. Because I feel like a lot of ideas have been just lost in the quagmire and we've all said, yes, we think this policy would be a great idea to have. But it's like, who's going to work on it? What's the steps to get it started and get it done? I mean, I know once we have a system, once it comes to the board the first time, then it goes to BPAP, and that's a good system. But leading up to that, the development of it to come to the board in the first place.
So one of the things that even though we call everything that board authorizes as board policy, some elements of that are exclusively to the board. And some elements of that are more for the organization, like the finance and the facilities and things like that. So for example, hypothetically speaking, bylaws. Okay. BPAP will be somewhat lost in developing bylaws for the board. So there has been, at least my experience in many places, a kind of a subgroup of the board that deals with board-related policy. So so primarily chapter 1 and chapter 2 is board-related policy. It talks about how you're going to have meetings and what are the standards for the meetings and things like that. So so the board typically is involved in developing those policies. So if that's what you're pointing out, Trustee Abood, I realize that we probably should have a conversation about we should have the document in front of us, board policies, and make it a discussion item, and see how actually the board related policies get developed and approved.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And maybe I'll give a better example. Is like the public comment policy. I think for like maybe a year or 2 years, I've heard board members bring it up at different parts of the meeting, whether at the new agenda items portion or whenever a hiccup happens. But we say we need to make our public comment policy better. But it's just it's a sentence that's said. It's never made into a motion. It's never. So do we just wait for a board member to go in and draft it and present the change? Maybe. I mean, and that's what I think some of us have done in the past for some ideas for policies. And maybe that's the best way to do it. But just that one is one that's come to mind. Is we've all said it. I think at some point maybe we don't agree what it should be, but I feel like everyone said, yeah, our public comment policy is not what it should be. But how do we, should it just be one of us taking the initiative and just putting it on the table, and that's our process? I mean, I'm fine with that as long as we can just agree to something.
So I think from procedurally, that's where we probably can tighten up as to how we accomplish it. Right now, because it's ill-defined or not very well defined, it may be that the board actually makes a motion and directs me that now, Superintendent President, go ahead and develop some policies on public speaking and bring it for our consideration, or you individually write up a policy and forward it to me for consideration by the BPAP. So there are many ways to go about doing it. I think for the board-related policy matters, I think it might be worthwhile having a discussion to formalize the structure as to how we make it happen.
Hearing Trustee Abood talk and mention for the one example about public comments and how we handle them. I mean, I think that's a good example where any trustee is entitled to develop a proposal.
Right.
And I think the best process is, let the president of the board know you're interested in doing that, and maybe to schedule a time to have it first considered. But to really, the first step, I think, is to go after the ideas are formulated by a trustee, to go talk to Dr. Goswami, maybe include the president of the board in those discussions, and then get it on and talk about it, get it on the agenda. That's how I see, for many ideas that trustees may have, that's how I see the process should work.
And I think, what trustee Aburi is pointing out, probably we have not codified it in some fashion, in some language. And if we haven't done that, we should do it.
Yeah. I think it is codified to the extent that how every trustee has the ability to get something on the agenda. And it says you go and present that to the president of the board and our president superintendent. And if they agree, it goes on the agenda. I believe that's the process, and that's in writing. That's one of our board policies. Trustee Parker, you've had your hand up for a while.
Thank you. Well, just following on with that, I mean, what Jonathan is talking about is Board Policy 2410 with its associated AR. And I was looking at that, and it is very fuzzy. And it might be a good idea to have a flowchart exhibit attached to that. Maybe clean up some of the language, but then also just have a flowchart exhibit so that it's super clear, who can start what and what direction it goes, because there's a lot of different directions it needs to go if you've started that. And I will, I've said this before and I will say it again, I strongly feel that Chapter 2 of the board policies should be renamed board bylaws, and to make it super clear that that is not part of the rest of the policy organization. And then I'm just going to make a pitch for updating and clarifying ARs. I mean, I think that when we're talking about, for example, we were talking about, or Dr. Goswami was talking about the budget and balancing the budget and that very ambitious goal and basing it on reasonable estimates. That board policy actually has not been looked at in 5 years, so it's always worthwhile to looking at it. But the reality is that budgets are always have to be built on reasonable estimates. They're always a moving target. I think that language is probably fine. Where we as a board have quite a bit of disagreement is the assumptions that are used on those estimates. And it's interesting because typically that comes from the outside, where like a union, for example, would say that a board or staff are basing projections that are too conservative, and they disagree with the assumptions in that way. But disagreements can come from any direction. And I'm curious to see if there are other community colleges that, for whatever category that there's a board policy, where you're making where there's methodology being used, where there's data being used, where the ARs have, which are typically developed by staff, have pulled in some clarifying language so that we can be clear what assumptions are built on, or what methodology is being used for data. So I have not really looked for that. I think it is, it's something that there are so many gray areas that I'm not sure if a high quality AR language is out there that can at least try to clear up some of it. But I think that it'd be really worthwhile to look for that and to see if there are some things that can come forward on the staff side in the ARs that can just help build a stronger foundation for us on that.
So I think those are great ideas. I don't have the board policies up in front of me. What is the title of Chapter 2 now that you think would be better titled bylaws?
It is called Chapter 2, Board of Trustees. And so typically what'll happen is that what I've seen in other districts is they have the whole list of board policies, and then, you know, they'll have the board bylaws as you know, they might be in the 2000 series, but it'd be like Board of Trustees bylaws. And instead of BP 2010, for example, it's BB 2010. And I think that can be really helpful.
Okay, thank you very much. Trustee Gallardo.
I think Craig had his hand up. Craig, do you want to go?
Oh, okay.
I'll go after him, Robert.
Okay.
Okay, I think I had a couple of points when it comes to creating new policies. I think that we have to, the biggest improvement we need to make, or maybe it's some kind of an AP for the board, is what happens when you get a new trustee. It's very difficult to figure out how to go about creating a new policy for a new trustee. There's no chart or diagram or clear procedure. And after I knocked around on this for 8 years now, I feel like I really believe that no matter what kind of flow chart you create or how detailed you get the policy, it's never going to cover every instance. So the first step is really go and talk to the two people you can talk to. Is like one other board member, more or less usually, but doesn't have to be the president. President Goswami. You go to those people and tell them what you're concerned about. And when I was new, I did that, and I've done it with 2 of our presidents, 3 actually. So far, I went in and I said, this is a problem that I see, and I think, you know, we need a policy to do this, or a better policy for that. In most cases, the policy was there and I just didn't get to the right one, or I didn't find it. In 2 cases, it got written for me. Not that I liked it or proceeded with it, but I got help. And so I don't know that you could do a flow chart for it. You could do something like, this is an idea of how it would work, but at least a starting point. And once we get it started, where does it go next? Kind of hard to figure out sometimes. So that's my feelings on that from my experiences. I'm especially concerned with how it affects new trustees, because they need to get up to speed as quickly as possible. And you know, in my case, it didn't work to have, you know, a mentor for me. It didn't work. My fault, the mentor's fault, whatever, it didn't work. And so then I had to go to the doctor in charge, the person we hired. So that made it kind of hard for me, and it delayed me being a little bit more useful and to understand things. And then I had one other comment about measuring our success. And when we write policies or we set goals, how are we going to measure our performance to those goals? And one of the things that I've seen, and this was brought up earlier, I'm going to try and nail it down a little bit more, but not to get too specific, super specific, or get in the weeds of it. But when we do things, anything like change the method in which we measure something, when we do that, we lose the ability to measure our progress and to see how we were doing previously. And I've seen in several areas, we've all seen this happen repeatedly over the last years. And we need to be careful about changing how we measure things, especially when we can't go backwards in times, which is sometimes been the case, where we couldn't go back in time and say, okay, these old numbers were like this, but if they were calculated with our new way of doing it, we would be able to compare, but they weren't able to. So it's sometimes in a couple of instances, I felt like this is just like kicking the can around, saying, okay, we've improved this, but we haven't necessarily improved anything, and we can't measure the improvement because we can't compare the apples to the oranges. So we need to be really careful about that when we change, be mindful of that. Maybe that should be, in some other words, be in one of our procedural policies, to be careful about and think twice before we change how we measure things. And so that we can compare and see if we've made progress or not. Because someone feels like we made progress, if there's no tangible proof that we made progress, then it doesn't really count. It just maybe makes some people feel better. I don't have a better closing statement. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Trustee Gallardo?
Thank you, Robert. You were saying ARs, Kate, but I knew what you meant. You meant APs, administrative procedures.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, because in K-12 it's AR. I knew what she was talking about. So to Jonathan's point about the policies, I think that's where we've been hung up. And I agree with Kate that there has to be a distinction there. I don't know, Dr. Goswami, of California Community Colleges, if that's common to us, but I know in K-12, it is common to have that section be BB's bylaws, you know? So you can tell us, I've never seen anything, and I don't know if the 398 page templates that the league gives us, you know, to update our policies, if that comes directly from them, or if we just have the authority to be different and change it. The BP 2410 that Jonathan brought up, which is, you know, we always joke that we have a policy on policies. And so the language there says that the administrative procedures are issued and revised by the superintendent president. And so where we get hung up in not being able to change things, which was Jonathan was saying, or simple things like if we wanted to change something with, doing with you, Dr. Goswami, like if we had to change your evaluation date by 2 weeks or something, and we went into August versus July, according to our policy, we do have this flow chart, Kate, but it is pretty, kind of goes around and it's like worse than the 405 freeways down in LA. It says that outside of this cycle, any person may initiate or review the policy by submitting a request in writing to the superintendent that will then be considered by BPAP. So I think what Jonathan's saying, which, and I agree, well said, that if the board has something that is related to the board, it's a policy, we should be able to initiate that amongst ourselves. But we wrote in the policy that the superintendent does that, and in the AP is where it says we can't do it. So I think that we have to, is what Jonathan and I think Kate were saying, is we need to, in addition to BP 6200, we need to bring back to the board 2410 so we can add that. And I think, Jonathan, that's where we clean it up, because where we get locked in is in the AP. The AP is where it says that we can't do it unless it goes to them. So I agree 100% with Jonathan that we need to put that language into our own board policy, that if the board, you know, wants to do something, we can do it, because at this point, I don't know, what do you think, Dr. Goswami? Is that, I
will look at the, read the policy. I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah.
And now provide, some suggestions as to how you might want to improve that.
Mm-hmm. Because it just seems like we locked ourselves in there by doing that. I don't know that we intended to do that. I don't know when this one was last revised in 2018, and the AP was last revised also 2018. The fiscal one, we did revise that just this last May. But it seems like, and Marcia, maybe you can chime in. I know this was one that the college heavily worked on for 8 years, and even to get to this point was a huge leap forward for the college. And so what are your thoughts in terms of improving this process now that this policy has been in place for some years now?
Well, a couple of things. One, I don't want to get too far off of our noticed topic here. I think this is a good discussion, and I think maybe we should perhaps bring it to its own discussion. As for the fiscal policy on best reasonable estimates and assumptions that go into that and so forth, I really like Kate's suggestion that we think more carefully about what do we expect to see there in terms of information. I, for example, have found myself frustrated by when our assumptions say something is going up, like PERS, it's going up some percent, and this is the number, but it never says, what do we pay for PERS? And you can't find that by looking easily in our budget. I mean, and I think it's something that it would be useful for us to know. So that's something that could be clarified. PERS and CalSTRS are big numbers in our budget. So it's nice to say, okay, this is what we're paying this year. This is the percent increase. That's this many dollars, whatever. It's a pretty simple way to word that assumption. And I think we could add to that, of course, that we get this change in the case of PERS and STRS because they have enacted certain percentage increases, and that's how we know what the number is. So you're explaining the number and you're saying how big it is in terms of our budget. In terms of BP 2410, which is the how do we do policies, I'm not quite sure what you were looking at, Veronica, if it was the AP, but the APs can never contradict the board policy. And I think what you read contradicted the board policy, which means we have a problem with the AP. And normally the APs are not coming to the board for us to say there's a problem with that because it's conflicting. And I think we rely on our president to catch that. But as you said, we've had a lot of transitions, so that's no surprise that something like that might not have gotten caught. The fundamental thing about our current policy on how to initiate a policy is that it's open to anyone who is passionate about what we need as a policy. And I feel like that is the person or persons who are the ones to come forward with the idea and bring it to the board and say, this is important, it should be a policy. Probably 90% of our policies are league policies. We subscribe to their system. You're right, Veronica, it is, Chapter 2 is board policy through the way the league numbers it and the way they present it. So we would be an outlier as a community college to switch it to bylaws like the K-12s. That's not to say we can't, but I'm not sure there's a real fundamental reason, because what the league is doing is they're taking statutory requirements for the most part and translating parts of those statutory requirements, which they think we should have in board policy, and then sending them out to all the colleges who pretty routinely adopt those changes. So that's what we spent most of our time looking at when we went through and updated board policies over 3 years a while back. What's the statute say? Which part of it is important to let people know and put it into a policy? Another 10% is my guess are actually SBCC only policies. And that's where I think it's most interesting. And that's where, somebody can come forward and say, really, we feel as a college that this topic is important and we should have a policy, and here's some language to talk about. Now, I'm not saying I'm not open to other ways to look at it, and a chart may be helpful, but it sounds like the chart that we've got is not correct. Because the fundamentals for the board policy is put together something that describes what you think should be the policy, bring it to the board to discuss. If the board likes it, we'll move it on to BPAP and shared governance groups for their input. If the board doesn't like it, I don't think we move it along. That hasn't happened yet, but it could.
Thank you, Marcia. Trustee Haslam, do you have a wrap-up comment for us?
Well, I'm hoping to. I really find that the discussion has been very interesting. And what I would rather not do is get to the end without really responding to Jonathan's initial suggestion, which was let's set up a process by which something actually happens. And I think it was Dr. Goswami who suggested that perhaps a subset of the board should have a look at chapter 2 to determine, which direction should we go, the bylaws direction? Should we stay with policy? Would there be a way that we could all funnel suggestions to the superintendent president, and he and that subcommittee could actually look at it and come back to us with recommendations? That's point 1. And point 2 is really a question, Mr. Chairman. How are we doing on time?
We're doing well if we wrap up this topic shortly.
Well, that was my intent.
Okay.
We will go ahead and put an agenda item for board policy development, at the next October meeting.
Very good.
We can formally discuss and take action.
Good. I agree that the topic or idea that Jonathan brought up, I think, is a good one, and follow up with another at another meeting, I think, is appropriate. Okay, I'm going to move on to item 4.3, which is Code of Ethics. I think that, if I'm not mistaken, Veronica may have been the one who suggested we add this, but I just have a few comments to introduce it. I would note that BP 2715, that is our Code of Ethics, is 4 pages long and addresses a number of really important topics, not all of which I would consider purely ethics, but they're very important topics, and I think they're essential to the effective functioning of the board. And I would recommend them for review by each board member. I think they've been especially helpful as a guide. I know as the president on a couple occasions, they've been really helpful during the last couple of years as we tackled a number of difficult and controversial issues. And I would say that overall in reviewing them, I would observe that with very few exceptions, I think our conduct has been consistent with at least the spirit of 2715, if not the letter. I would note, however, maybe it's because of our last meeting, I will mention this, but I think I noticed a couple sentences in 2715 that struck me that I think we could pay more attention to. One states that we should refrain from lengthy, repetitive commentaries during board meetings. And the other one states that it recognizes that we should recognize when a matter has been adequately considered by the entire board. That's my own view. I just think we can do better in that regard. Other trustees may have other portions of the Code of Ethics that they would like to discuss, but that's kind of my introduction to the topic. I don't immediately see Trustee Gallardo, your hand is raised.
It was a good introduction. I agree, Robert. I think it's always good for us. This is part of Standard 4, which is evidence for our accreditation coming up. And it's something that we annually review. And we just hadn't, well, we did actually with Dr. Benjamin, she put it on our cycle. And so it's part of what we do with the Brown Act and any updates. And the board primarily obviously oversees and part of accreditation in a lot of different ways, but Standard 4 specifically applies to us. So these policies that are directly related to Standard 4 are good, to go over, and I agree with your comments. So.
Okay. Anybody else? This may be a quick discussion. Trustee Haslam. You're
Very,
yeah.
a very quick comment. I think, I agree with your opening statement. As far as I can see, we are abiding by this. And I use by way of comparison, my experience in the first 2 years where it was much more difficult. And though we seem to have no shortage of disagreements, they are disagreed to agreeably. And I think that's the heart of the essence, the heart of the board policy on ethics. If from time to time we get enthusiastic about a point, I think perhaps the pandemic also exacerbates some of the testiness that we may observe from time to time. End of comment.
Thank you. I see that Trustee Croninger has a comment.
Just a short comment to say I agree with Peter because a number of you were not around during those years early on, and it was very different in terms of the sections you mentioned, Robert.
Yeah,
very different. So,
you know, in reading, I just say in concluding that in reading through them, I was struck by how well they were written and how much we really do abide by what's in the code of ethics. So if my predecessors were responsible for drafting them, it sounds like they were. Good job. I think 2715 is a good document. Okay. I don't see any other hands raised, so we'll move on to 4.4, long-term financial plan and strategic direction. And I just note that the absence of any, I see the word financial, and I note the absence of any budget material that was attached to the agenda. So I'm assuming this topic is meant more as a consideration of broader policies to guide our financial decisions.
That's
And
right.
so with that introduction, I will invite comment.
May I introduce the topic?
Yes.
So at our last board meeting on September 10th, you got a preview of the 5-year projections. And basically, if you look through the projections in terms of the part that talks about changing fund balance, which is basically whether we have a deficit or a surplus, you'll see somewhere in the range of, if you look at 22-23, 23-24, 24-25, you see somewhere in the range of $2.9 million, $2.7 million, $3.2 million projected deficit. So from my perspective, that is a good number to start off with as a consideration of our structural deficit. Because those has been presented that if we don't do anything, that's where we are going to end up each year. We can argue about whether the number can be bigger or smaller, but at least now it is that number and could be bigger. So I would urge the board that consider that whatever we're talking about trying to balance the budget, we are looking at making adjustments to the tune of $3 million and up, perhaps. Number two is over the last 3 or 4 years, not 5 or 6 years, we have been trimming down our operations budget, which is the supplies non-personnel budget. And right now, roughly of the $100 million budget, $10 million is operations. And for a health institution, that number should be more like $15 million. So there are lots of things that we could be doing, we are not doing. Because we have been, because that's the easy part to cut. It's easy to cut and you don't see the effect for a few years, it doesn't impact the institution dramatically, in a year or two. But if you don't keep doing that, things that we should be doing, then the long-term impact of the institution is going to be severe. Which basically brings me to the third point, that that in terms of the adjustments that we'll have to make to get to a balanced budget, one, we can look for some source of revenue, an additional revenue beyond what has been projected here in the 5-year budgets. And number two, that cuts, any and all cuts is likely to come from the personnel side. And $3 million is a significant number for on the personnel side. There are a couple of complicating factors here that is unknown, at least for a little while. That unknown being what happens with Proposition 15. What I've heard, though not from the Chancellor's office, but from CCLC folks, is that the revenue that's going to come from Proposition 15, if it passes, will be supplemental to Prop 98 funds. So that money is not going to go to the state. That money is supposed to stay locally and distributed locally. So depending on how the assessment of commercial properties go, again, assuming that it's passed, it has passed, we would get anywhere from $3 to $6 million, $3 to $5 million in that neighborhood, which is good news because that's a number we're looking for now in terms of the budget deficit. Keep in mind that other institutions that don't have a structural deficit will also get $3-4 million if their budget is our size and the community is our size. They will be able to use that money to make improvements and institutional improvements beyond what they've been doing now. And if we use that money to basically fill the gap that we have, then we will not have the dollars to make the investments that will be necessary. And that will bring in a cycle where we will begin to fall behind, because other institutions are making investments of $3-4 million into the institution for new things, and we are using the $3 million or $4 million just to plug the structural deficit, and we have not been able to make any additional investments in the institution. So that is a policy choice in front of you as a board. That should that pass, do we say our budget problem is solved? No, we use the money to balance the budget. Or do we still need to make some structural adjustment as is necessary because we have become we serve fewer students? And it is a fact that we are serving fewer students compared to what we served in 2012 or 13. So you have in front of you a number of choices to make. Those are truly policy level choices. Same thing with the personnel. Obviously, the moment you talk about the personnel side, you will have to talk about programs and services, cutting programs and services, or reducing programs and services. But it's ultimately going to impact people. So I would like to hear from the board members, what are your thoughts about how to proceed in terms of what are your thoughts about programs that you think may not be serving us well, may not be serving the community well? Or what are the services do you think we can do without? So what are your thoughts? So please be as frank as you can in sharing your thoughts. So that gives me guidance so that I can, based on what I hear from you, I can bring some options to you in the future, which will be in October.
So, Dr. Goswami, one couple observations. First of all, the 3 to 5 million or 6 million or whatever it is not a one-time thing. It's a year after year after year.
It's a year after year after year.
Secondly, as I hear you talking, I'm thinking to myself, how will passage of Prop 15 affect our chances for a successful bond measure in 2022? And I don't know, that's hard to know at this point, but I just wonder if it might have some impact on us. Trustee Abood, you have your hand up.
Yeah,
I'm
I mean, I
step aside
think,
and put the blind down.
no worries. I think, okay, I think this agenda item, like the prompt that we just got in terms of like what programs are important and what might be less important, I feel like doesn't really fit with the agenda item as much. I mean, it kind of does, but we just didn't get much of a prompt or anything to prepare us for what to think about and want to say and look into for this item. So I'm gonna obviously speak off the cuff here because we didn't have that. I think it's a good point that, you know, if we pass Prop 15 and we get the new money annually, I mean, yeah, if we're just plugging the holes, nothing changes at all. So we should always be committed to making the changes needed to meet our goals. Like if we're going to eliminate achievement gaps completely, we cannot do the same thing. So I do agree with that. You know, it should just be done in a way where the college and the students are just wholly involved in any changes that are made. And it's something that, you know, is not just a top-down thing that's for some people, but, you know, they develop the changes and they know what's best with, you know, what faculty know is best and what students and staff know. And, you know, then we make those adjustments as a college. I think that we should be doing that whether or not Prop 15 passes and whether or not we had a deficit. But in terms of just one program I wanted to highlight, if we were being asked that, you know, I just read an op-ed today by former Mayor Hal Conklin, and you know, one thing he pointed out in there was the health industry and making that a big point in a big industry in Santa Barbara, and that did make a lot of sense, and it is one that I've always felt was pretty deficient here, and our nursing program is, you know, a crown jewel of keeping us going in the healthcare industry. So whatever we can do to support that and grow it, and just, you know, he suggested in there that the city should pay us for it. That'd be cool. Why not? Because it's fundamental to the economy here. So I think promoting and supporting the nursing program, which really gets people into good paying jobs after they graduate and is a high need and could really grow our economy, would be one where I'd put my support.
And hearing you say that, Jonathan, reminds me that another huge industry in Santa Barbara is the hospitality industry. And I wondered for some time whether we need to put more resources into that, that serves not only providing training for students to go out and get good jobs, but also assisting the local economy and local businesses.
Right, and another growing one is the cannabis industry, which I think San Francisco Community College came out with a degree for that. Santa Barbara is going to be an epicenter for that. You might as well have locals be getting those degrees and working in the industry.
Interesting. Trustee Nielsen.
Yeah, well, so far I had a few items on my list and then I just added another one or two. I think in order to accomplish what we have to accomplish, for obvious reasons, because we're one of the leading colleges in the nation, and we've been cutting and cutting and cutting to the point where it's going to hurt. Even if we didn't have to cut further, we've got to accomplish a greater degree of efficiency so that we can do those things that we cut, or we will lose our standing. So the first place you start is to consolidate programs and services. We've got to lean things out. That's the first thing that's got to happen. We've got to be more efficient, not just in teaching bigger classes necessarily, so much as to be more efficient in teaching them, managing the teachers, providing the guidelines and the resources. We've got to consolidate. If we don't consolidate, we won't save anything. And then when it comes to programs, I can't tell you which programs to cut. I can name programs that we've let go a little bit that we need to step up on. One was just mentioned, hospitality. We had a crown jewel in food services. We had a nationally ranked top chef created a program. It's gone. If we can get it back, we have the restaurants in town and the industry that could use the support. We need to get it back. That's just one of the examples. I don't know if we've ever really done much for hospitality industry. We've got a good cosmetology program that supplies our community with trained people. I really think we could do well if we got something more involved in agriculture, whether it's just for marijuana, but there's many other crops and things that we could possibly affect. We need to get out in the community and do some research, ask these different industries, companies, and people involved in them what they need and where they're going and what would help. So when it comes to consolidating programs and services, it just has to happen. One way or another, we have to get more efficient. In terms of that, I'll pick an example. Several of my constituents over the past 6 months have asked me, how much does it cost you to field a football team? What do you spend per year in expenses? Not picking on football, please don't get me wrong. However, it's a great example. I don't know how much we're spending on football. What does it cost us to bus the players around to the games, the supporting services that we provide? There's an expense there that goes with the program. And if it can be consolidated so we could know, how much the program costs, then we could evaluate the program. We could weigh those costs against the benefits. And I'm not judging that particular program. I'm just saying that's the kind of approach we need to take on all of our programs. There are some special programs that we do that we're touted nationally for. One is the, marine diving underwater work program. And there are others that we're really good at. Then there are other programs that I don't know how to measure. I've had constituents ask me about what is the benefit? Is there some kind of tangible benefit, or how do the graduates from our theater departments, our drama departments, those kinds of things, the arts, those kinds of arts, do they find, when they finish here, do they find jobs? Is it productive for the community? I happen to believe that it is, but we're doing not a very good job of defining those benefits to the community. And when we can't define the benefits of what our programs do to the community, then it's really hard to go to the community and ask for help. Just on the aside, speaking of help, if Prop 15 passes, probably going to have a tougher time getting a bond through. Would it have a huge impact? Maybe not, but it would have a significant impact. And then a big problem in how this deficit situation got created, a factor that helped create this situation. And this is important to understand, because if we don't know how we got into this situation, it makes it very difficult to avoid it or to make it better. So how did we get there? Well, more years than not, for the past 6 years, most of the past 5-6 years, we've been looking at our forecasts and then doing the budget based on what we forecasted would be the revenues and what would be our FTU count, how many students we're going to have. We're forecasting way off. There are years when it's totally understandable to be way off, but then there are years where it's not. Better forecasting is crucial. I would urge our president to look around the country at schools that have been doing a better job than us and finding out what the heck they're doing, because our forecasting of what's coming our way has been very inaccurate and causing us to budget more than we should for things. And then when we cut because we had no choice. And then what we cut is all the low-hanging fruit. At this point, the low-hanging fruit is gone. There isn't any. So now we're looking at, consolidating programs and services, because that's where we have to do it. And when we're going to consolidate there, we've really got to look at efficiencies and how we measure that. And if we don't, in 5 or 10 years, we're going to be in a much worse place than we are now. It'll get worse, and we will lose our #1 rating because of the reasons that Dr. Goswami stated before. So that's my thinking on it. So what I'd like to get is the programs that we have, like, say, football, basketball, the arts, theater arts, cinema arts, business education, and the nursing. Maybe we should put more money into the nursing. And what can we do about we have this huge opportunity in food services, and we're not doing anything that I can tell, or nowhere near what we could be doing. And over the past couple of years, I've had numerous conversations with employees in restaurants, and they say that they're taking these classes in Oxnard or some other city. Why not here? Why not here is my question. And so I won't take your time up with telling you all those answers, but there's huge opportunity, and we're just letting it go away. And there are other things. What about, there's a big need for automobile repair and services, and we've been filling a niche in that in training, but there's so much more opportunity, and we're not getting our share of those students. We're just not getting them. They're going to private universities, private colleges, out of state in a lot of cases, trade schools. We could be teaching that stuff on a much higher scale, and I don't know why not. And I don't know that it's even possible for us, but I haven't heard anybody talking about that we couldn't do more. But in order to generate more, we need to be in better communications with the market, with our marketplace, with our stakeholders in the community, with the people in all the different businesses. And one way to segment that and make sure we're covering it all is to get an index by SIC code that's local and make sure we're talking to all those SIC code stakeholders to see what we could find. And if we would do that, I am 100% positive that we will uncover quite a few different opportunities that we've skimmed over and went by. It's not like it was 20 and 25 years ago or 30 years ago when high schools taught shop classes. They don't do that to the degree they used to do. So I would, if there's a specific thing, just as an example, I would ask our president to come back to us in October with what does it cost us to field a football team in the program? And, you know, what's the benefit? Is it, what happens with that? In numbers, not, and the ramifications associated with it. If we didn't have it, if we were to give it up, what would it cost us and what would we save? It doesn't have to be that program. It could pick another one if you like. But that's the best example I could think of, and I'll probably have more to say later. But almost all of what I've said has been on my list for the past 60 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Trustee Croninger.
A lot going on here. To try to kind of go back to a couple things that Dr. Goswami said, I think we are unfortunately at a point where we can't balance the budget without personnel impacts. And we have been here for a very long time with declining enrollment ever since 2009-10. We've done a number of things like SERPs and so forth to try to make an impact on that, but it just hasn't done it. And so sadly, I do support that we need to do more. And our board goal, which we all spoke positively of, is 2 years to get rid of the structural deficit. I also agree with Dr. Goswami that we should, if Prop 15 passes, and I'm not real confident about that, what little I know about the polls wasn't particularly encouraging. But if it passes, that should be money that we don't just use to plug a deficit and maintain status quo. I think we've got to use it as we would expect to become a better and more effective institution, and for innovation as well. We just have to come to terms with that structural deficit. Unfortunately, I think the structural deficit is considerably larger than Dr. Goswami has described, partly because in the assumptions, in the 5-year projections, I think the revenues are very optimistic. We may well get cut as well, rather than receive more money, as is suggested in those projections next year. So January is going to be an important data point. And I don't think, as we touched on last time, that we are setting aside enough to be sustaining on our maintenance, our basic campus maintenance, and that we need to do that. So for a number of reasons, I think our structural deficit is larger. So my suggestion would be that we look at this in phases, that, you know, there's phase 1, which I regard as optimistic, which is the current projections, and perhaps another phase if things don't go that well. Because as Craig said, we make these forecasts, and that is different than an assumption, but we make forecasts and we too often fail. And here we are with a 2-year, I hope, a real deadline to actually get our house in order, because we've been trying to do that for years and not succeeded. And if we keep kicking that can down the road, we won't have the reserves we need. I agree with Craig on a number of the issues that what places there are opportunities, but I think of those perhaps as too complex to do the kind of deep dive that we need to do to understand those opportunities within that 2-year timeframe to deal with our budget. What I think we could do is inform the board, inform the campus and community of what are our classes and what are they costing us. I think it will be obvious that a number of those classes are absolutely, even if they are costly, need to be supported, like nursing, we just touched on, maybe even expanded. But some of the ones that are most expensive might also reasonably be asked to look for, I mean, we have a contribution from Cottage toward the nursing costs of that program. And I believe that's still ongoing. Marine diving might be an area where we could look for contribution. You know, where are those jobs going? Is that industry prepared to give us a contribution toward training the folks in that program? Because I'm sure it's among the expensive ones. So I think it would be helpful in October to get that list. It's been a while, quite a number of years since we've had that list. We have had it in the past, but it informs the discussion to see what the different classes cost and their kind of relative standing there. And that's not just for the board, that's for everybody to understand. I think that's what I would say at the moment. I think it's a really tough time to have to do this, but there's never a good time. Oh, I guess one more thing. Enrollment. I don't think we can assume that enrollment will get better. Local high schools, I managed to get the benefit of a graph of my local high school, Santa Barbara Unified, enrollment over the past few years. 2014-15 was the high. This year is clearly a low. I owe this to Virginia Alvarez, who was one of the school board candidates who was doing this sort of thing. But let's see, I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's the graph for Santa Barbara Unified. Over on the left is now, and the highest point is 14-15, and we're talking about a drop of 1,055 students over that time period. And similarly, there's an enrollment in elementary districts. The drop there, these are the younger kids, the drop there between 14-15 and now is 819 students. So, you know, our local high school contribution is shrinking, and that is demographically the case nationally. There is a smaller pool of students reaching the age to come to college. And so I think we look toward further drops in enrollment as we try to make these forecasts. And that again affects our revenues.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you. Thank you, Marcia. Couple things I want to comment on. One is I agree. I think a look at the demographic trends is really important. I've seen some of that same data, not necessarily about Santa Barbara, but just kind of nationally what's going on. And we're just a small part of it. So those numbers you presented to us, we need to keep an eye on. Secondly, I just want to mention that as a follow-up to what Craig talked about in these different programs and what you mentioned, I think industry involvement is is the key to developing any of these new programs. I mean, we have, the hospitality industry is huge in Santa Barbara County. And it's obviously all being adversely affected by the pandemic, and probably now is not the greatest time to go to the hospitality industry and ask them to consider helping out with a new program at Santa Barbara City College. But I think in the long term, it's an area where we need to inquire of the number of the different industries locally. With that, Dr. Haslam, you're next.
Okay. Dr. Goswami asked for some way of providing feedback that would help him make recommendations to us. My suggestion at our last meeting, and it will be the same at this meeting, is to develop a set of tools that will be helpful. I think both Marcia and Craig have alluded to these tools, and that is a programmatic review that tells us the number of people involved, the number of students involved, rough numbers, nothing exact. But what I'm getting at here is a cost to benefit ratio. Which programs are high cost and low impact? That would be helpful to me. But even then, that's not the whole story. As with nursing, that may be, it may have low impact in terms of the number of students involved, but it has a high impact on the community. So that's a third variable. What's the level of importance of this particular program? So what I'd like to do is have some way of knowing how many people are affected by this program, what does that program cost, and how does it matter to our community?
I think that
I've decided that I want to illustrate that at the end of a sentence, one can put a period and stop.
okay. I think you well framed it, Peter. Trustee Parker.
Yes, I think somebody said fairly recently there was something ethical about being brief if somebody's already said what you want to say, and I'll continue that right now. Essentially, I completely agree with Trustee Croninger in terms of both in the passage of Prop 15, it's 50-50 at this point. I think it'd be wonderful if it does pass, but it is very uncertain. And like Trustee Croninger, I agree that no matter whether it passes or not, we need to be reviewing our finances and bringing them in line for our enrollment, which has declined and is likely to continue to decline. And the one other thing that I would say in terms of the programmatic review, yes, the impact on local industries, I feel like, that's just such a critical role for community colleges, and that sometimes we don't discuss that enough as a board. But also, of course, what students want to major in, and then the side effects. So for example, when Trustee Nielsen was talking about the arts and physical education earlier, there's lots of national data on the fact that whether or not you're majoring in theater arts or music or physical education, that those programs actually have a terrific impact on student mental health and on well-being and success in their other courses. Not to mention the fact that those have terrific career opportunities if students are actually majoring in them. So with that, I will end. I hope that helps Dr. Goswami as we move forward in this difficult discussion.
Thank you, Kate. Trustee Gallardo.
Thank you, Robert. Dr. Goswami, last time we met, I had asked, and so our percentage of salaries is about 90%, right? So there's some deadlines for a reduction in force. And so for us to reduce our personnel, so backing into it, what is our deadline so that then we can sequence out the conversations we need to have?
I think the absolute deadline is March 15th.
Yeah.
But I would caution against, well, then we have time till March 15th.
Yeah, I agree.
I think these will be very, very difficult conversations. It will certainly affect all employees, create lots of angst. And I would suggest that, I mean, we will certainly provide the data in terms of program costs and students and all that. But what you will find is that we will have to make choices. If we simply look at inefficient programs or programs that are not serving, we will not get that much. No, we have, most of our programs is serving a need and doing and is reasonably efficient. So what we'll be looking at, what is basically trying to make a conscious choice that even though this is working and is functioning, it is not as important as something else. That will be the choice that the board will face. I mean, if I'll be lying if I tell you that, well, if I give you the data, you can eliminate all the inefficient programs and you're done with the problem. It's not going to happen, because the issue is going to be that we will have to make choices in terms of which programs are important for us and which programs are, so to speak, is not that important, not as important. But all of them are viable. There are very few unviable programs, non-viable programs here. I happen to have some numbers for football, ballpark numbers, to give an idea. Our cost for football is about $260,000, $270,000.
250.
260 or 270,000. And we have 100 students roughly, and they all take 12 credit classes. 30 of them are from 30 plus students are from our non-residents. So if you attribute the kind of ballpark estimate of revenues, you're looking at FTS associated with about 75 to 80 students. So the revenue that comes from football is much higher than the cost. Again, I'm just giving ballpark numbers, so that you can get a scale of what it is we're talking about. So, or to look at the other way, that if we eliminate football, we'll actually have $250,000 or $300,000 less in revenue. Our hole is going to become bigger. So the choices that you'll face is that you'll have to make choices among pretty viable programs, and that's why I'm not looking forward to that conversations. So going back to Jonathan's, Trustee Abood's comments about involving the campus community, yes, they will be involved, but I can guarantee you they will not be able to make a decision as to which program to cut.
Right.
That has to be made by us.
Well, that's understandable.
Yeah, and it will be unfair to ask faculty, well, choose among yourselves as to who you want to eliminate. But it will be unfair to ask staff, well, here are 30 of you, who do you think needs to go? That will be unfair for the task, for the employees, for us to do that. So I think we are not banking on Prop 15. All I did was pointed out that our scenario and the scope of the matter will change if Prop 15 passes. But regardless, we still have a issue to deal with.
So when do we have to make that decision of what we're cutting, so that we're talking then before the end of the year?
I would say, if you're going to cut, spare people the agony and do it as quickly as you can do it, maybe by January.
So by the end of the semester.
By the end of the semester, we have a pretty good idea, and by January, we make a decision.
I mean, to Marcia's point, I mean, I'm looking, the latest graph, I mean, it's not updated, but Marcia, this is the, the graphs we used to get of enrollment. And so as enrollment, I mean, I don't want to make the claim that we increased in staff while enrollment was declining, because there's a lot to be said about the data. But looking at the data, yes, there's numbers in the 200s. And then on the right, you have a column with FTS dropping, and then you have our staff growing. And I think that the question has always come up, how are we declining in enrollment and increasing in staff? And of course, we know that we've added certain services, and not one student can be serviced the same as another student. And so there's a complexity in that formula. So we know that, but that is, when we talk about right size in the institution, so it sounds like we're heading in an area where this is probably going to be the size of our institution with these types of students, or the number of students we have, right? And so that report that Lanny also did that, or the local taxpayer association did that report with declining enrollment. The thing with the local K-12 is, yes, there's declining enrollment, but just being in the K-12 world, just personally, me and my circle, the number of letters of recommendation that I've written for private schools. So I think that whilst children are leaving Santa Barbara Unified, they're not leaving the city. So a lot of them are being homeschooled. The homeschool has grown, and our private schools are all at waiting lists, and the families have just opted out of our public school system. So I just think that as our K-12 public school system gets better, those families obviously will want to enter back into the public school system. So there is some hope in that, but overall, yes, Marcia, there is a declining in K-12. We have, though, increased, Dr. Goswami, right, in dual enrollment, and we had, I think, evidence of that this last summer. And I think that was evidence of parents, again, opting out of what the secondaries were offering, including myself, and going to Santa Barbara City College, where we knew we could get a high quality distance learning program that we've always done well. So I guess I would agree with Marcia to be mindful of what's going on locally with the enrollment. And so we can look at that. And then I agree that with 90% of our budget being salaries and benefits, there's nowhere else to go. And I know Craig mentioned that a few years back. Dr. Goswami, at a fiscal committee, when we did have that committee, the idea was, when we were talking about these issues, that we're going to get there, we're going to get there. And at that time, it was commented that there would be a reduction in salaries. Is that something that can be on the table as well, asking folks to take a pay cut, or will that not be significant, or a combination of both?
Well, I think, we will have to consider all alternatives to see how to manage. So just like I'm having a conversation with you folks, similarly, we'll have a conversation with the constituencies also as to how they want to approach. So salary cut will be the approach where let's everybody share the pain, and whether it's going to get us there. But the thing is, do you want to take a permanent salary cut? So that you can keep 3 more additional people here.
Right.
So, those are kind of, choices, discussions we'll have to have with the employees to know what they feel comfortable with.
Okay. Like Marcia, I'm supportive of, moving forward in that, because there really is nowhere else to go, because they sacrifice it all for everybody. And so I think what you guys did with the schedule of classes, where you narrowed the scope of the offering, but the offering was still within the limits of what a student could accomplish their CTE, certificate, degree, or transfer goals, then that's where we need to go. We know that nursing has always been something we've had to backfill. Nursing has never generated the type of revenue that would exceed what the students are bringing in. And so same thing with the Children's Center, we've always backfilled that. So I'm aware that there's items like that we will always have to backfill, and we will always have to fund, because they just don't generate the income. So I don't know if it's just Marcia and I, or if there's others that's where we're heading, that we're saying, yes, move in that direction, that we need to cut that 90% down. I don't know, Craig, I know you would mention that as well.
Okay, Craig, do you have other comments? I see your hand raised.
Thank you. Make sure that I didn't mute my mic. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I thought I talked long enough, but I kind of wanted to end more on a positive note, so I'm going to do that now. Because I don't want to repeat, even though I agree, tremendously agree with almost everything that's been said so far by everybody. And so I'd like to introduce something that I consider a positive. There's an old kind of axiom to go by in the business world, and it's kind of like if you're not growing, you're going to shrink. If you're not doing well, you're going to end up doing badly. To put it in different words. So we either plan to grow or we plan to decline. Right now, we don't have to plan to decline. It's already occurred. So now we have to get sized right so that we can grow. And we need to do some things in order to grow. And to do that, we need a positive mind frame, and we need to really take a look at what's kind of going on. I guess I learned this from about to say towards the end of my college mission to get a degree in marketing, and I got to listen to a retired vice president of M&M Mars, and he summed up, and I understand this is in Marketing 101 textbooks, at least some of them these days, but it wasn't at the time. And he said, in order to sell something, which is what we have to do, we need to sell our services to get the students to come to us. We need to market them, put them on the market. So we need to give people a reason to buy, just a reason to buy. And we need to give them a reason to buy from us. And we have a really good reason already if we don't shoo it away and hurt it. We're one of the top ranked junior colleges in the country. That's a great reason for them to come here. Over the past few years, we've made some mistakes. We kind of bowed to pressure to discourage that because we had community issues with student behavior and things, and maybe we didn't attack, and I'm convinced that we did not attack those issues in a comprehensive, cohesive manner as much as we could have. Evidence of what's going on, football's really inefficient. Well, it didn't have to be, but the marketing wasn't done. I used to go to the Vaquero football games. Has anybody been to one in the past 2 or 3 years except me? You go there you go to the football games and there's hardly anybody in the stands. It's empty. Every time I've been to a game, there's probably been 50 people in that stadium watching a football game. Whereas if we used to have local high schools have their games there, you would pack the stadium. It would be overflowing most of the time. I tried to bring that to the attention of several departments and couple of past presidents, and gave them some real concrete marketing ideas, and they did nothing. They sort of poo-pooed what I was saying. I feel bad about that. I wasn't effective in my presentation and didn't give them enough reasons. But there's a third thing that you have to do after you give them a reason to buy and a reason to buy from you. You got to give them a reason to do it today. If we're going to be able to do, and that's what we have to do to grow, put it in whatever terms you want. The college already knows how to do that. They develop programs to appeal to international students, and they came from from halfway around the world to take classes that no one else offered. And we had a lot of foreign students because of those programs. Whether they knew what they were doing or not, and I can't believe that somebody didn't know what they were doing, they did it and it worked. If we eliminate programs like that without implementing something else, we're just going to end up amplifying our problem. And we have to eliminate some things, so we need to be really careful. Wow. I believe that we need, one of the big things that hasn't been talked about that we really need to develop, and we need to do it over the next 12 months, if not as fast as we can. We need to invest, plan on monies to invest in new programs or to reinvigorate plans or to recreate them. We need to actually set up a budget item for investing in new programs, because if we don't, we're going to get left behind. I don't just believe this, I know this. This is what I've witnessed empirically. It happens. So we need to invest. We need to budget to be able to invest in new programs. And we need to do some serious marketing. When I go to La Playa Stadium, there's nobody there. And the few basketball games I went to, there was very few people in the fans unless they were related to the players. That was just my experience, and I didn't go to all the basketball games, nor did I attend all of the football games. But I went to enough to get the drift, and I do know people in athletics in this community, like the Round Table, some of those people and others. We have to, especially when it comes to the arts, we've got to be out there. We've got to be connected to the community and developing new programs. I was really disheartened over the last few years when we let the food services program kind of dwindle and go away. We've really got to revitalize these programs or give up. We have a huge hospitality industry. We've had tons of brand new restaurants start up in our community. We're like an oven to generate these new businesses and concepts and ideas. Santa Barbara's got a track record like nobody else that I can find. No other city produces or area produces the kind of startups. We had a startup, Motel 6, Sambo's Restaurants. You could go this huge long list of Kinko's we could go to. We could go to this huge long list that came out of our Santa Barbara incubator here. And City College did have something to do with that. And it seems to me we've lost touch and we're not paying attention. There is tons of help for us in our community. We just have to ask. We really have to ask. And then when they give us advice or help, we need to understand what they're saying and heed it. Whether we do it or not, that's another decision, but we need to invite it and listen to it. And we have to do all that while we're making cuts. And we have to do the planning while we're cutting so that we can get back where we were, and it's not so much that we need to get back where we were, probably bad choice of words. We have to get back into a growth mode. And to do that, we have to have something that somebody who's willing to pay for. Whether it's a taxpayer willing to pay or it's people willing to pay to get trade knowledge, we have to have a product that's saleable. And if we don't do that, we're going to continue to face decline. And I know you don't like to listen to somebody go on and state the obvious, but nobody has been listening. The cuts, we have no choice. We have to do what Marcia called for. I don't see a way out, but that's not enough. If we don't do these other things in the vogue of what I mentioned, it's not going to get better.
Craig, thank you very much.
I know, I'll shut up now.
Okay, we're a little off schedule now, so I'm sorry to interrupt, but I see we got a couple other hands up. Marcia?
Just two quick things. One is, I know that Craig is passionate about these issues, but I think they are complicated beyond what we can accomplish in terms of this budget. It's good to keep our eye on what's new and where we need to develop. Absolutely. I mean, look at Newsom's executive order that's going to turn our car industry in a different direction rather clearly. But at the same time, looking at the hospitality industry, I think that's a complicated issue, actually, whether or not what we offer fits with what our community wants. So that's my comment on that. The other comment is just that I really do think that what happens in the January budget is going to be important here. And I would urge us to be prepared for a more severe scenario, thinking it through with time and not find ourselves, with an oops in January, where we thought we were going to cure a deficit that is now larger. I just feel like we need the flexibility and we need not to make the decision too quickly so that we find ourselves making two decisions.
Thank you, Marcia. Kate, your hand is up. Do you have another comment? Okay. Well, I think we've had a good discussion. Before we go to our dinner break, though, I'd like to ask Dr. Goswami if he has any final comments or response to all the good suggestions and ideas he's heard from the trustees.
Well, first, I appreciate all of you speaking what you had in your mind. A couple of things. One is that higher education institutions, their steady state of balanced budget is always a couple of % of growth a year. So it is extremely difficult for higher education institutions to balance their budget when there is no growth. So in that vein, what I would like to suggest is, as we talk about right sizing or resizing the institution, that we make decisions in such a way that we are a vibrant institution, which does things all institutions can do and should do, which includes introducing new programs, doing innovative things. So I don't want to end up with a budget exercise where now we kind of not decimate vibrant. And that's where we would like to go to. We don't want to go to a smaller institution that's crippled. And depending on the kind of decisions we make, we can either have a smaller institution that's crippled or a smaller
remaining weeks and months of the year. So we're going to take our dinner break for 30 minutes, and then when we come back, we'll have 75 minutes to finish up our last 3 items. And I think looking at what the items are, I think we should be able to comfortably do that. So we will start again at 6:45.
And we need to mute the mic at least.
Thank you for reminding me. Yes, everybody should mute their mic at this point. Otherwise, sometimes So do we have everybody returned? I guess it's hard to say without.
I don't know, Robert, but I'm here.
Okay, Craig, thank you.
Maybe I was too long-winded a few minutes.
You had great, I'm sorry to cut in. You had great thoughts, Craig. I just thought that you had them made pretty well.
I did try, but those weren't brand new thoughts, so.
Okay, I have 6:45. I can't be certain that everybody is with us, but I think
Looks
so.
like Jonathan's there. Hello, Jonathan. He's not talking.
Yeah,
I
I
see-
think then go ahead and get started.
Yeah, I think we can get going. So we got three items left. One, the first one, accreditation and institutional self-evaluation report. Second one, board agenda master planning calendar, and the last one, Proposition 15, which I don't think will take us that long. So accreditation. I'll just introduce this topic by saying that this is personally my first go around with accreditation. And I'll have to say, I was really impressed with the enormous amount of work that must have gone into this draft document. I can't say I've read every word of it, but I did look through, I think, virtually every section and noticed some highlights. And leaving accreditation aside, I definitely learned a number of things about all the good work that's going on at the college and filled in some holes for me and on some programs that I didn't fully understand or appreciate. And then finally, I'll just note that I thought the section that covered the board, I thought it was generally fair and accurate. And with that, maybe I could start with Dr. Goswami to have him introduce this.
Yes, in fact, I have very little role. I would go ahead and introduce Dr. Ralston and Patricia Stark, who's been working diligently for more than a year on this project. So I will ask Patricia or Pamela to start.
Okay.
Oh, Pamela and Patricia. Well, Patricia, welcome back.
Hi, it's good to be back with you guys.
And-
Very strange, but good.
And really, so I take it from Dr. Goswami's introduction that you were the ones who put pen to paper and produced the 210 plus pages.
And I've actually got some guidance on how to read that 200+ page document today.
Okay.
Robert, this is actually my first time at accreditation too. And I just want to say early on that what we decided to do is to try to make this a really meaningful process instead of checking boxes. We could have checked boxes, but that's not the way we wanted to go. We really wanted to use these standards to try to say, yes, we know we meet the standard, but how can we improve some of the things you guys were referencing in your earlier conversation? So I think we can actually keep this pretty short, but we do have a presentation. I'm going to go over some slides. I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Ralston. She's going to go over a little contextual stuff, and then we'll catch you guys up with what are the next steps. So I don't know who's driving, but it might be Oren, or there you go. All right. Excellent. So here is our presentation, and there we are, Dr. Ralston and myself. So can we have the next slide, please? Okay, this isn't what shows up on my presentation. That's okay. This is the people who accredit us. And next slide, please. All right. So 2 weeks ago, you guys reviewed what now feels so familiar to me, but probably is a little unfamiliar to you, standard 4B and 4C. And those are the accreditation standards that refer to the chief executive officer, in our case, the superintendent president, and the board of trustees. So you guys submitted those over to our steering committee. We folded them into what we're calling an ICER, We have a name for everything, but it's actually an institutional self-evaluation report. So that was the report that is now our working draft. What the college has put together, what you guys contributed 2 weeks ago. And that is the 200 plus page document. CPC got a first crack at it on Tuesday. We first looked at it. And then we had a webinar, but we also put out a survey tool. It's closed today, so I haven't seen the feedback yet. We sent it to everyone on campus with requests for people to provide feedbacks on their areas of interest involvement. Z Reese is our director of institutional research, set it up, and he did it really brilliantly so that people could go into those sections that they were interested in or those areas of engagement and just provide feedback on that. We also asked people, and Dr. Ralston's going to talk more about this, there's certain areas where we say, okay, yes, we meet the standard, but there are areas where we'd like to improve. We call those improvement plans. There are 9 of them within this report, in addition to one long integrated plan around governance and decision-making, standard 4. So anyway, that's the survey tool went out. Next slide, please. And then we held a campus-wide webinar that was last Friday, updating employees on everything I'm telling you today, showing them how to complete the survey, encouraging them to do it. We shared that again via email. So we are trying really hard to be as transparent and as inclusive as possible on this document, recognizing that giving a lot of people something of this heft at this point, people may not actually want to dig in and read it, but we are trying to make it manageable. Next slide, please. Okay, so you have it on your agenda. And what we're going to ask is that if you have feedback to any portion of this, that you coordinate that with Dr. Goswami, who will be bringing it to our steering committee meeting next week. So at this point, we're doing both verbal feedback as well as the more documented feedback in the survey. Next slide, please. So that was September. September is our month for gathering feedback. And then come October, what we're going to be doing is taking everything that people are telling us. And we are finding that there are things that we missed. People are submitting, what about this? And what about this? So we're going to take all of that. We're going to finalize the document, give governance groups one more chance to take a look at it. And then November, next slide. Back to you guys twice, and then the ICER will be finalized. So that's going to be the process that we're going to follow here. Pamela's going to talk to you about some later dates, but we need a chunk of time at the end of the year to do the formatting and all of that stuff. So next slide. And Dr. Ralston will give you guys very briefly some context, the reason, and why we're going through all of this effort on behalf of the college.
Thank you very much, Patricia. So Patricia served as the faculty co-chair to our accreditation steering committee, and you have the list of all of those folks who did that great work on the agenda in our accreditation update document that we appended there for you. So let's go ahead and we'll go to the next slide. So the institutional self-evaluation report used to be on a 6-year cycle. We're finishing up that last cycle of 6 years, and our next cycle will be a 7-year process, and in year 4 of that process, we'll do our midterm report. So the last time around, for those of you who were on the board in 2015, we did a large self-evaluation. We had a number of follow-up recommendations. We worked through those. In 2018, you got to see our midterm report. So it might feel like we're coming back to this in a way that seems a little bit early. And that's because we've been invited to participate in a special project. So the self-evaluation report is this deep dive institutions need to do every 7 years in order to make sure that we're meeting the standards for our accreditation board, which is ACCJC. We do a written analysis that lets us look at our strengths and weaknesses. And then in those areas where we think we can go further, we develop a number of improvement plans. So, Oren, if you could show us the next slide. Last year, I introduced this actually probably more like 2 years ago. We were invited to join in a pilot project with 2 other community colleges in California to work on something they're calling the Formative Summative Project. And it's a step back in some ways to our more academic traditions. It looks a little more like the other 5 accrediting bodies nationwide It's this sense of really thinking through accreditation a little bit the way you would an academic project that you submit for peer review. For a journal, you get expert feedback, it comes back to you, improve your document, your article, and then you submit it again for publication. So we are submitting on a slightly earlier time schedule. So it's our documents due at the end of January. Over that time period, our team is going to read our document. They'll meet virtually on March 5th, and they'll determine where our strengths and weaknesses are. And those areas where we're strong, they're not even going to pick those up when they come to visit us in October. Instead, after this March meeting, they'll be sharing with Dr. Goswami and me a list of things they think we need to improve upon in context of the report, or in areas where we might have some gaps that we hadn't noticed. And we'll have the time between that document will show up near the end of March, their report back to us, and we have the opportunity to work on and improve before they come to see us in October. So this is a new approach that's very likely to be implemented across all of our colleges in California and the Marianas and the islands that ACCJC oversees. So if we could go to our next slide. So we're going to bring you up to date on the great big document that's in front of you that I'm sure you've read, memorized, and annotated for our purposes. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. I've organized this in a sense so that you could see where we're really trying to push ourselves. So ACCJC went through a period of time where they earned quite the reputation of being a punitive watchdog. So instead of thinking about the great work that colleges did and the way they could do better and how they could learn from each other, they were doing a lot of kind of punitive. Dr. Goswami actually referred to them as something like a restaurant inspector. So they were coming in and just looking for places to ding you instead of seeing the whole of an institution. And they've really changed their approach. And so we went to a great training in February of 2018 where they brought us up to speed to see them as partners in this work and to really use our time as a self-reflective tool that's pretty meaningful and deep. And our steering committee's done great work in that way. So let's go to the next slide. So standard one, you talked about a lot of these standards today during the course of the board meeting in ways that you may have realized actually directly relate back to the work that we do. So we've worked on our institutional mission, that part of the standard. We updated our mission recently. We've been talking a lot about institutional effectiveness and academic quality, and then institutional integrity, a more overt substandard now than used to be in the old days. And so they're much clearer about who we need to be and how we need to work in the world. So let's move on and I'll tell you a little bit about our improvement plans. I'm not going to go into all of them. So we have 128 substandards in our accreditation work under the 4 large standards. We've decided there are 9 areas where we need to make some improvement. So we need to make sure that we're working on how we manage our institutional set standards. We have them, we use them. We're in the midst of adapting from the old scorecard data that we used to bring to you and working on deeper, more meaningful metrics. And so this improvement plan is a way for us to really dig in deep and make sure that everybody's using those same standards. So we'll be working on that. Let's go on to the next one. I'm going to highlight these in standard 1B for you. So 1B7 is about evaluation of our policies and practices across everything that we do. Your resolution 18 asked us to do that work through the lens of equity and anti-racism. So that's an example of the way that we think we could do a little bit more on this. And this relates to our efforts on decision-making and leadership later. And the next slide. This is a piece about how we share the results of our assessment. And so if you're thinking about program review, you're thinking about some of those student success metrics that we've talked about, this is an opportunity for us to dig and commit to that planning process with its assessment cycle. So we're focusing in on that. In the copy, go ahead and go to the next page. You have another improvement plan in the working draft that we've actually knocked off, which is finishing our distance ed plan. That got finished last week for final approval. So it's got a little highlight in there, says likely to be resolved, but we wrote in advance in case we didn't get there. Standard 2 is the great big standard that's all about teaching, learning, and student support. We're doing really well there. We had one standard we wanted to focus on the next page. And this is about making sure we have equitable access in all of the different ways that we do services. This relates a little bit to our work in guided pathways. And so we've made sure that we highlighted an area where we wanted to focus in on how we're serving our disproportionately impacted students, our non-traditional students, our adult students. And so that's a little bit of focus for some of the work we'll be doing there. In standard 3, we have a couple of areas that we've highlighted on the next page. in human resources. So the standard 3 is the resources, all the things that an institution needs to have in place in order to do its work well. So we set out the mission and our effectiveness in standard 1, standard 2, the what of what we do. Standard 3 is how we do this work. And so let's talk a little bit about our human resources standard. We have a couple of improvement plans here. Next page. So we want to make sure that we are working as effectively as possible in our hiring practices. So you heard about our EEO plan at our last board meeting. These are the work processes that we make sure we do well when we bring people into the front end of our institution. And the next slide is an issue about making sure that we're effectively evaluating managers and training managers in their work to evaluate staff. This is one of the issues that, you know, was raised in our climate survey. And so we're making sure that we've overtly addressed that in our improvement plan here. And then our next one for standard 3A is implementing a project that we've been working on, but we haven't gotten all the way through, which is to use the Vision Resource Center at the Chancellor's office to really house all of our great training and professional development work that we do. And our next slide should take us to the standard in 1B that we want to make sure that we're improving on. We want to make sure that our up-to-date work for accessibility is well documented and planned. And so the folks who worked on standard 3B have decided we need to overtly establish that. And then we'll go on, and this will transition us into, total cost of ownership. You love this one, actually. All the things that we purchase and buy, we need to make sure as they come in that we're ready to take care of them as we go through in a physical plant sort of way. And so the total cost of ownership is here. Standard 4, I think, should be the next one. Yay, okay. And then I'm going to hand this back to Patricia, and she's going to walk you through some of the planning work we've been doing here.
So I think it needs to be emphasized that at no point do you draw a line in the sand and say, this is before and this is after. And I think there's nowhere where this is truer than in standard 4A, which is how the campus handles leadership and governance. So we've been writing an improvement plan for the better part of 6 months. And I have to tell you that COVID came along and actually showed us, one would think it would show you where the cracks and problems are, but it actually ended up showing us how well things worked. So we have this very long, we call it an integrated improvement plan. And what that means is, as we went through the 7 substandards in standard 4A, we saw we want to address this, we want to address this, we want to address this. And they were so interconnected that instead of writing little separate short improvement plans throughout, we decided to write a longer document. And that is what we're calling the integrated improvement plan. I want to also say I had a glimpse at some of the early feedback today, and I was so happy to see that a lot of our feedback was from classified staff, and they were actually really happy with the way that they were included in this improvement plan. And that brought me a lot of joy because I worked really hard to make sure that happened. But anyway, we are 4A, you guys are 4C. We don't deal with 4D because we're not a multi-college district. And of course, Dr. Goswami is 4B. So next slide, please. And I'll just talk about what the integrated improvement plan includes. In a nutshell, based on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Climate Survey and a variety of other things that have happened over, I know, my tenure as Academic Senate President the last 2 years, we just had a lot of confusion, and I want to say bad feeling at the college about how decisions were made, how transparent they were. People just did not understand how our governance structures worked. They're all there, they're all on paper, but there was a lot of confusion. So what we tried to do in this plan is what you see here. Improve governance structures to support innovation, find ways to increase employee engagement, and work to make things more inclusive. One of the things we found we needed to do is people don't understand where they fit in this. So we did a lot of work on trying to clarify what the constituency groups are and the difference between shared governance or participatory governance and operational. Our employees do not really understand that very well. And then we have just a crazy quilt of committees and task forces and work groups. And in some cases, they overlap and redundant. We really need to do a deep dive on that. And way I started by saying this is that some of this has already happened. Dr. Goswami has already recognized some of these things. He's already started a task force that we're going to expand that's going to be doing exactly this. And of course, we want to make sure that all of our committees have the training that we need to be more efficient, to make sure that we are working. And I know we hear this a lot through an equity lens, but when that gets operational, it's really pretty interesting work. And then you see the last thing we say, clarifying the role of classified staff who felt deeply disenfranchised according to our equity survey, our campus climate survey. So it's a bit of a heavy lift, but we're committing to do it, and we've already gotten started. And I think we're gonna be able to do this, and it'll result in a much better college. And then the final thing I'm gonna say, next slide, please. We've never done this before, but this is part of that pilot that Pamela talked about. They wanted us to do what they call a quality focus essay, the QFE, a 5,000 word document where you take one area that's directly related to student success and you say, okay, this is really what we're going to focus on. Now, we're not going to be judged on this. You know, there's not going to be any kind of sanction on this, but what we decided to do were 3 specific areas of guided pathways that we've identified, or 3 areas that we really need to work. And next slide. The first one is onboarding, everything from the minute that student first goes into sbcc.edu website all the way to being placed in the right classes. We just have to do a much more intentional job of looking where the problems are, making sure we fix those and address those. Program mapping is the part that I've been involved in. That's where the faculty work with the counselors, where we try to create these really actual visual, concrete maps saying, you want to do this, you start here, you go here, you go here. It's a very visually driven process, but there's so many options out there. It's been a bit of work to do that. And then finally, we're just getting new software that we think is going to help us do all of this. So 5,000 words, enjoy reading it. I think Pamela may have actually added a couple of extra words, I'm not sure. But that's our quality focus essay, explaining to the accreditors and to ourselves, this is where we want to really focus our energy and our commitment in the coming years. And next slide.
Thank you.
Pamela's going to bring this home now with our timeline and how we're going to finish this up.
If you did a word count on the quality focus essay, you would realize we are 88 words over. And so feel free to offer up 88 words when you take a read through it, if you can find them. So this is our timeline, and it's nice to show a timeline where we've actually had a number of items that we've knocked off. So you'll notice that we're down here on September 24, where we're getting to meet with you during your study session and talk to you about this working draft. So I just want to reinforce that. Don't feel like as you're reading that you have to do any kind of editing or fine-tuning work, right? This is a conceptual read, making sure the content is there, asking questions if there's something that doesn't seem clear. And we'll keep working and improving this. And as we work through this process, once we're able to sign off and have approval from all of the constituent groups, Dr. Goswami signs off, you sign off, we'll have a very tidy, cleaned up electronic version. So ACCJC has really moved us to a much more streamlined version. The last document that we produced in 2015 was this beautiful print layout. It was somewhere close to 400 pages. They have asked us to try to be at 175 pages. We are not there yet. But we've worked on a very strict guidance to try to stay there. So you'll notice this seems shorter than documents you've seen in the past. And they're working toward a goal. They have a goal that someday there will be a template where you actually just walk through and upload your evidence, but they're not there yet. So we're still pretty invested in the written part. So we'll be laying that out and getting that finalized. In January, we'll share that final document that's gorgeous and beautiful with the whole district. And then on March 5th, as I mentioned, there will be this virtual visit. They won't be on the ground with us, literally or figuratively. That's a team project. So they're doing that by themselves with our materials, and then they'll be responding back to us. That's the day when then we'll take a look at our distance education courses. So we've got a team getting ready to figure out how we'll manage all of that as effectively as possible. And so that's a place we're doing some more revision inside Standard 2 to talk about all the great work faculty have done, the district has done to respond to COVID. So we're doing some last tweaking pieces, because as we were writing over the last 18 months, who knew that we were going to hit a pandemic that would change the entire world, and we'd be running a mostly online college. So we're doing some final work on that. Some of the final adjustments, of course, with our new superintendent president. So there's some last pieces that are getting refined there, as well as adding in evidence where we think we might not have enough. And then the last slide says, hey, do you have questions or comments or concerns? And how would you like to share those with us? So remember, when you have written commentary back or you have concerns, you can share all of those with Dr. Goswami and he'll share them back with us. I know that he's working still on pieces of 4B and C, so we can do that. Thank you.
So
sharing, there we go.
Before I turn it over to other trustees, I'd just like to ask, to what, you may have addressed this earlier, but to what extent has COVID-19 really affected preparation of our accreditation documents? In other words, I get the impression it hasn't had that much impact. Other than adding several chapters to address how we're dealing with it.
I can give you a couple of examples. I think most directly, the one I should speak about has to do really with Standard 2 and Standard 4. And that is, how did we handle, honestly, we had to take every single aspect of the college and re-examine it. But how do you handle online classes? So I'm going to be really honest here. I've never taught online before. I never wanted to teach online. I didn't know anything about teaching online. And my discipline is journalism in the college newspaper. So to say this was difficult. So what we did is the Academic Senate, as a body working with other groups, but we decided that we were going to provide people like me with the resources that I needed to do a credible job teaching online. And I know you guys have heard this before, but we just kicked all of our shared governance processes into gear right away, and just one thing after another. Dr. Goswami was very helpful in terms of trying to find funding to supplement some of this, but I don't have the numbers. I know that I personally turned in distance ed addendum for 12 different courses. I worked through the summer on that, learning and teaching myself how to change my curriculum so that it could be effective online. And then I got all this training through our Faculty Resource Center. Our curriculum committee was deeply involved. Our faculty resources were involved. The administration was there with us every step of the way. So I can't think. The first standard is, how does innovation work at your college? Now, this was forced innovation, but I think we're going to come out of this with a really great distance ed program. We're forced to do it, but people like me, I mean, there's so many people that are getting a deep education on this. And we're finding where the gaps are. We're finding out, well, maybe our evaluation process isn't as great. So there's just, that is one example, but, I'm sure that others can give you others. Our leadership team was cross constituency. We were consulted virtually every step of the way.
There's probably no better example of why, if you're doing the work at the college the way you should, accreditation shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
So if your policies and your procedures are in place, if you're functional in your communication, if your resources are aligned, if your planning's working, you can manage a pretty major problem like a pandemic. If you're fraying, if your pieces aren't quite as tight as they need to be, then you're going to really struggle. And so one of the challenges about accreditation is it's a look backward, and it's hoping for changes going forward, right? So most of the planning work in accreditation is really about planning to address problems that you realize looking backward. So it's not an integrated plan. It's not a strategic plan. It's not an educational master plan. It's checking where you are and where you have been. So we have some pieces of this document that for somebody new coming to us like Dr. Goswami felt a little dated. What are some things that are more recent that you're working on? And so we're freshening up our evidence because we've been writing for almost 2 years. So what it looks like when you're doing this in the midst of the pandemic is checking to see, did the thing that we planned for being on the ground translate well enough for us online? where were those places that we needed to adapt and adjust? And by and large, it's great to hear this from the recently stepping down academic senate president. We did pretty well by everyone. We had systems in place that could ramp up. We had support that could be activated. And we approached the accreditation steering committee with an eye toward the committee that we want to be in standard 4A. So we're applying the work there that we're trying to do to help committees across the whole college. So we've been trying to live the things we're hoping to improve. And I think that's made the last 6 months or so an easier space, work-wise.
Well, Pamela and Patricia, thanks for an excellent presentation. Hang on. We've got a couple questions coming. First from Peter Haslam.
Not so much of a question, but a comment. I am just so impressed. And this is not my first accreditation process.
It's not.
I so well remember at the end of the process last time that President Lori Gaskin got up to say, you know, this just took way, way too much time, too much of my time, too much of everybody's time. And we were doing box checking. We were doing all of these other things that had absolutely nothing to do with reality.
Yeah.
It had to do with doing what we anticipated they wanted us to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a game playing. And if it is over, I am just so grateful to whoever made it go away, because we have spent much too much time over the years on nonsense.
Yeah. The reason ACCJC changed is because it is a peer-driven institution. We changed it.
Yeah.
Each of our colleges stepped up and had something to say about how we wanted to look after one another and ourselves. And it is a better organization. And this process, knock on wood, is a better process. And we've been deeply involved. I've been able to call ACCJC and talk to the president. I've been able to talk to our liaison a number of times. Dr. Goswami and I had a really great meeting with our team chair on Friday. So it feels more welcoming, more thoughtful, and more intellectually meaningful. It is much more an academic project in the best sense of the word. And it's been a thrill for me to get to work on this formative project.
Marcia, you have a comment or question?
Well, absolutely. I second Peter's comments. This is so different, and it's so rewarding to hear how it is different from what we went through last time. It was really discouraging to have Lori get up and basically, I think she said that was a waste of time.
Oh, man.
And, you know, I mean, that was so discouraging for us. And what you're describing is just a different world. And I am so happy that that's happening.
Yeah.
Consistent with that, and I think you touched on this, it's my thought that you have put together these improvement plans and you're probably already jumping in to do them. So by the time they get here, you'll be telling them about all of the progress we've made. Is that true?
That is true. And that's one of the major changes. And we should give Lori Gaskin some credit. She is a commissioner with ACCJC. So that experience that she had here with you informed a lot of the changes that got made. And we were really clear. So in the old days, they used to say, make no changes. You're in an accreditation cycle right now. If you change anything, it won't match when they come visit you. And they'll treat that badly. So you can imagine, so you could go a whole year and a half and know something was really bad, but you couldn't fix it until after they came. So we have put in work that we're actually actively involved in right now, shows up in this document, right? So I mentioned, and Kate laughed, right? We got the distance ed plan done. So we'll pull that improvement plan out and we'll update that information to say, yeah, you got approved. So we're in the midst of this work all the time. If you're doing accreditation right, you are training people to know what the standards of the work that we do at the college is. Accreditation is how colleges work. We bring new people into a college, we should have them read the most recent accreditation plan. They can learn all about us. And then it's a great way for new managers to learn about the expectations that we set for them. So if we're doing this as daily meaningful work, when it comes time to do this work, and it's been harder this time than it probably will be next time. We've had a lot of transition. We've had turnover. We had to put pieces back together as we went through. But we're building a legacy and an understanding of what this work looks like. And it will be easier next time because it's the lived experience of how we go about this.
I can give you guys it's not a trivial example. It's not on the COVID level, but if you take a look at the way that we operate, we have the board, and then we have committees, and we have subcommittees, and we have ad hoc, and then we have task force, we have work groups. We got different people on different groups and different roles, different memberships. At our last CPC meeting, we looked at an update of our governance handbook, which just defined what's the difference between a committee and an ad hoc task force. How is a task force different from a work group? What are the different roles on this? It sounds like a small thing, but it's really what we called for in our improvement plan, and that is we need clarity. Excuse me. Asthma. We need clarity on these things. And, we've already taken a lot of steps to do that. So thank you for saying that, Marcia. We really are. We're not drawing a line and saying before and after. This is a living document. Believe me, we know what's in it. This week, I complimented the woman who takes the minutes for the Academic Senate. And I said, we're trying to create a template for taking minutes at the college. This is a good template. You've really got a good, so, we recognize these things now as we're coming across them. So thank you for letting me say that. But we are starting to, we've noticed things, and we're not going to just kick them down the road because the team hasn't been at the college yet.
Yeah.
Greg Nielsen, you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I got mostly a comment. I'll try not to repeat anything Peter or Marcia said, because I totally agree. I only 8 years, so only the last time, and Lori did it, and I heard what Marcia heard, and then we followed the whole thing, and there was talk about using a different accreditation agency or organization even, because what we had was broken, and it was really controversial. Well, it sounds like it's been really fixed. And I did read word for word over half of those 200 pages.
Wow.
Because I wanted to see the differences. I was really curious. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what was going on as a new trustee and not being in the educational field. It was like a real learning, time-consuming experience for me. And although I won't be here in 2021 on the board, I have not lost interest, and I'm still very interested. And I have to commend you for the changes. And on the side, your hair looks wonderful.
Who, me?
Yes, you. Thank you for letting me.
Yeah, I know. What can I say?
A lot of hard work that you do.
It's turned my hair gray. This accreditation project.
Hey, my hair's great. Thank you.
Hey. Dr. Goswami, do you have, before we leave this topic and let Patricia and Pamela enjoy the rest of their evening, do you have any comments?
Well, I think what I always say is that if you do things the right way and pay attention to the substandards and standards as you do your business on a daily basis, then 6 years later, the report writes itself.
Yeah.
Because you have been doing that all along, and this is an institution, is an institution that does not pick it up just on the 6th year. It is always involved in making sure that it tries to stay with the standards. So that's why I think it's coming up this well. So I'll again extend my thanks to the steering committee and Patricia and Pamela. I think by the time we do the revisions for October, it'll be even better document.
I look forward to the day the report actually does write itself. That will be a really great day.
It'll probably never happen, but if you don't set it up so it can happen, it definitely will not.
Right. And one of the things I think we're most proud of, I'll just leave this as our closing statement. we didn't have a single writer on this report. This report has been crafted by something like 20 different people at the institution. It's one of the reasons why we need a last edit, right? But it is really the work of many, as it should be, as opposed to somebody like Pamela locking herself in a closet and writing this report out because it had to get done.
Oh my God.
This has been a full college effort, and we're really grateful for everybody who's helped us do this.
Well, excellent. What a good news story for us
There we
to
go. Yay.
get close to the ending. Thank
Yeah,
you very
knock
much.
on wood. Knock on wood, Robert. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much
all.
for having us.
Okay. So trustees, we've got two subjects left and 35 minutes, and I don't think it should be a problem finishing. Our next subject is our agenda item is 4.6, board agenda master planning calendar. And I guess I'd like to start out with a question. I believe this is generally based on the document that was prepared with Dr. Benjamin's help last year. But I note it's a calendar year, not a school year. And so I assume that 2020 master planning calendar is meant to be a proposal for 2021.
Yes,
Otherwise, we're approving something where we're almost done.
yeah, it'll be for next year, right?
Okay. Okay. Well, with that clarification, turn it over for comments. I think see Jonathan's hand is raised.
Yeah, I think it looks good. My only question is the diverse workforce point that was under October. It's under like the deleted ones. That's in our policy to get that once a year. I'm just wondering, is that now just going to be quarterly with the equity inclusion report? I mean, that's even better going beyond the policy, or is that renamed the annual diversity EEL report?
Yeah, I think the report got renamed.
Okay.
So a lot of the things you see as deleted, they also, I mean, we haven't deleted tentative budget. We have just deleted tentative budget from April and put it in a different month. And the bold items that you see there are new items that the board never saw before.
Okay, so the new bold one will still have the district efforts to create, maintain diverse workforce and the employee diversity. Okay, cool. Thank you.
So one of the highlights of the things that now we have never sunshined collective bargaining negotiations and authorization to do collective bargaining. I think that we should tidy up that process. We need to do the 10-year review. Institutional effectiveness report that we have not shared with the board in the past, or at least the board did not have a practice of doing that. Program review. So some of those items are new items that we have. The 50% law and fawn compliance are two items that the board never saw before. They might have seen parts of it as part of a separate report, but never an independent report. So overall, I think this will align the kind of reports you see with the actions you might have to take immediately after that.
Okay. Marcia, do you have some follow-up? You're muted, Marcia.
Some of the things just mentioned we used to get, but have not recently. So we've talked about the fawn, we've talked about some of these other things before, but it's great to see them come back, and I'm glad to see that. Consistent with what we have virtually, not quite, approved, the board goals, we are talking in terms of basically a monthly update, not just in March, the budget update, but basically on the assumptions how are we doing on these assumptions? And that was something we talked about, particularly because we are in a budget focused couple of years here. So my suggestion is that we include that. I don't know exactly how we want to word it, but it is in our board goals. And another thing in our board goals is receive regular progress reports on disaggregated student access and success data and vision for success goals. We've got one of those, and I would suggest we go to 2 of them, and that should be consistent with our improvement plan as well that was just mentioned, that we're going to focus on these and improve that. So I think the board, I would say let's schedule 2. Student success metrics is November, but let's do another one as well.
We talked about it. I think one of the things that happens is data only comes out at a certain point in time. So we cannot be chasing data in the middle of the year where there is nothing to report, But all our, the equity and inclusion, and then the student scholars report, the institutional effectiveness report, all of these will have disaggregated data. So that is basically how data is presented, not necessarily, So basically, you'll have disaggregated data to the extent available in all the reports.
So what you're saying is that when we get the other reports, we'll see the disaggregated data on access and success.
Right.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm not saying it has to be a full-blown report like you're talking about from the chancellor's office level, so much as when you gave us some information from our own internal data, which is helpful. So that if we're getting it in different reports, that's fine. Monitor implementation of resolution 18 is one of our items. We don't specifically call that out, so where will that be?
I think most of it will be part of the my report. Whenever we do something, I'll report it, and then we have specifically included the quarterly equity and inclusion report.
Maybe we could say something about including resolution 18, because I think that provides evidence that we're meeting our goals here. And also a report back at some point, which would fall under this, the policy and procedure review with the equity and anti-racism lens, some kind of report back to us on that, that effort.
Okay.
And I would love to hear about the quality focus essay and guided pathways. We've got guided pathways down in March, but I'm wondering if that's a little early for what was just described to us in terms of progress there, and whether something later in the year we could hear more about how that effort is moving forward. And then the last thing was the Ed master plan that I mentioned earlier. I think it would be good for us to see where that is. I would leave it up to you when during the year it might be ready for us to look at, but it has been, I don't know, at least 6 years or something since that has come to us, and I know there've been amendments.
Yes, Ed master plan, doing it the right way will involve hiring a consultant, and it's more than a year's process.
Well, even just understanding where we are now would be helpful after 6 years. That's a long time. And maybe where we plan to go with it, that kind of thing. It's sort of an update. And that's my list of topics.
Okay, thank you, Marcia. You obviously went through the calendar with a fine-tooth comb. Good. Veronica, you have a comment?
It's just more of something I'm wondering, how is this going to play out, I guess, in one board meeting, assuming we get everything else? Are we adding, the one February one does say study session, but are we assuming that all this is just going to get added to the regular board agenda? Or are we adding a special meeting or study session so that, and really my thinking is the college is going to go to great lengths to provide all of this. And the board has requested that, we want to see this. So in order to have meaningful thought and conversation, it would be a shame that this just gets thrown into a packed agenda and you just kind of move along and then you don't get to meaningfully reply. That's my own comment. It just seems like the more you add, it doesn't seem like we have enough time to do all this.
I mean, the intent here was basically for the board to have a mental picture as to what they will receive at what point in time. Obviously, every month there will be other agenda items also as they come up.
Okay.
But this is clearly kind of what the board's kind of FYI. Oh, in October we're going to see this. In January we're going to see this. In February we're going to see that. So that's what it is. Regular daily business that you do month to month is not showing up here. So they will always be there.
Okay.
But going back to your point, it is possible that some months we'll have a number of important reports and a number of other topics might also come up. Agenda items might also come up.
Okay.
So I think that's where the board will have to manage how they spend some time in the meeting.
Okay. Yeah, just this seems like we're really broadening the scope, and since we're a lay board and we don't actually do anything, we're not going to physically produce these reports, and someone's going to have to do them for us. So being
Yes.
mindful of our workforce that we have, and we're talking about reducing workforce and a lot of different things, that do we have the capacity to commit to this, and is the board being realistic in what we are asking of you? Because then you'll delegate to staff. So I wouldn't want to create this domino effect where then we're saying do this, and then now we're, in a sense, exasperating the capacity of a department to have to do this. And so that's where it is. It's just more about being mindful and empathetic that it's not even coming out of a busy season and not going into another season. And that if this is realistic, and if it's not, I want to hear it so that we can adjust it.
I certainly appreciate your concern. From the looks of it, we will end up preparing just a few more additional reports. But from my judgment, those reports are important to be produced and shared. And that's why they're here. It's not necessarily that their report will be very long. For example, the equity and inclusion report, some quarters might be very short. But still, the commitment is that we will give something put something in front of the board.
That's good. And taking the good pedagogy that our faculty know, I would be open to, us really utilizing that flipped classroom model where we are given a heads up and introduce maybe the report at a previous meeting, and then say, and really study it so that then I don't want to say face-to-face, but then when we do meet, it is more of a meaningful conversation, but sort of like that presentation gets front loaded to us. And I think that that'll help expedite. It'll be more work on the board to do our homework, but I just think it might help get us to where we need to, and to have meaningful input and feedback on these reports that are being generated. Because I do know that this is going to take a lot of time, and I appreciate it. And I want to make sure that we are also in this reciprocal relationship where we're doing our part to give that feedback back. So I don't know how that plays out, but it seems like good classroom pedagogy. I don't see why we can't do it as trustee members and just do our homework.
Yeah, we will try to front load a few of the items if we can. But sometimes we end up producing the report on Monday, 30 minutes before we post in the agenda.
Yeah, that's true. I know with the Brown Act, I know I've got to get everything out at the same time the public does. All right. Well, whatever you can do, whatever we can do to help you guys. Thank you for putting this together.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Veronica. Dr. Hassel.
I think this chart is very helpful. It lends itself to transparency. It says what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. And my plea is for flexibility, that there may come a time when you're just not ready for that particular report. You just have to say so. And I want you to have permission, essentially, to postpone it. And on the other hand, sometimes we'll hear a report and there may be a follow-up 2 months later. And I would hope if it's helpful to us in our decision-making process, that we would have a second and perhaps shorter report. But clarity is, I think, best supported with a degree of flexibility. So,
Good point, Dr. Haslam. Flexibility, I think, should be the role of the day on this. Marcia, do you have a final comment before we move on?
I agree with Peter and on flexibility. I mean, the point is that these are good reports, and if more time is needed, that's fine. Some of this writing actually looks more intimidating to like there's a lot of words here, but they're not that fast. I mean, they're not going to take that long, like in April, a bunch of resolutions and a blank for reports. We've got June study session and board retreat with nothing almost on them. So I think we have room for that flexibility to work with these things.
Okay, very good. Well, we've got 20 minutes left and one topic left, and we have one public comment before we get to item 4.7, Proposition 15. Jesse Felix has a comment for us. Jesse, thanks for hanging in there till now. We welcome your comment on this agenda item.
Dr. Goswami, members of the Board of Trustees, thank you for hearing me tonight. I addressed you on this with an email not too many days ago. Thank you, Trustee Abood, for your reply. I just wanted to echo the sentiments at the beginning of this meeting today and let you know that Prop 15 is estimated to bring in an additional $8.4 million to the Santa Barbara Unified School District. And as we already know, COVID has exacerbated inequities and much needed services are under attack. And Prop 15 can be used to close the equity gap in our schools. Prop 15 only affects properties valued over $3 million, and 92% of the funds from Prop 15 will come from the top 10% of California properties. There are benefits to property owners. Residential properties are protected, as are ag properties and commercial properties under 3 million. And this proposition is also good for small businesses. Includes a tax break for businesses in the amount of $500,000 of personal property tax that they pay on their equipment. So please, I join with other members of our community in asking you to adopt and pass a resolution in support of Prop 15. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. And I see Jonathan has his hand up. Let me just say before we get into this that, and we've already talked about this, so I'm assuming it won't take us all that long. We've talked about some of the aspects of it. But just one factual matter, my understanding is that the funds from passing Proposition 15 will come from assessing market rate valuation on commercial properties that are over $3 million. Those under $3 million will be exempted from the change in the tax evaluation procedure. So that is, that's how it's going to work. And that's what's going to produce us, if it passes, the additional funds. And this obviously all goes back to Proposition 13, which was, I think, in 1978. I didn't live in California in 1978, but I well heard about it. And it was a remarkable remarkable proposition that really I think had wide-ranging effects on California and how it pays for its public services. And I know it's been, as they call it, the third rail of politics in California. But from my understanding of it, I think this is the way to move forward. With that, Jonathan Abboud.
There is, sorry, thank you. Yeah, so I think we talked about this a little bit. A couple of things I wanted to highlight again are there's strong local support. SBUSD and the County Board of Supervisors here locally have endorsed it. And a lot of other community college districts, school leaders, and education organizations in California have gotten behind this. You can, I think if you can name them, they're pretty much behind it if they're in education, and from different sides of the aisle too. So I think that's really indicative that this is really huge for education, and as an education institution, I think it's our responsibility to get behind it because of what it can do. I mean, like we discussed earlier, if we bring in the $6 million, it's going to be for innovation and improving what we're able to offer here. $6 million that we should have been getting every year for 40 years, and we're going to keep getting it for perpetuity, hopefully. So it's not just a one-time thing. I think it's right sizing our revenue is how I see it. This shouldn't have ever been a thing. Prop 13 was, supposedly for the older homeowner being priced out of their homes with property taxes. It wasn't for the mega corporations who have owned property for 50 years and are paying less taxes than new businesses that our students are graduating and starting. They're competing against these large corporations who are given an unfair tax break, whereas newer businesses are not given that same break. They're forced to pay the modern property taxes like everyone else is. It's only going to come 10% of the properties are going to pay 92% of the costs. I think that just makes perfect sense. Education is supposed to be a social mobilizer, and that's what this does. It says those who are the wealthiest are going to put in the money that's going to help us help those who are neediest, and that's what SBCC is for. So I think it's important we take a position on it. There's a resolution that the Unified School District and the Board of Supervisors that we can use as our template, and we can get it done at our October meeting and just build onto the momentum. Because like it was said, it's 50-50 right now. I think 51% was the last poll by BPIC. So anything we do, anything that's done by anybody will help push it over the edge. So I think that's why it's important for us to endorse, because if it loses by one vote, our endorsement could have been that, flip one vote, then it's on us. I'm exaggerating there, but you know what I mean, with it being so close and it being such a benefit, I think we need to get involved in this one.
Thank you, Jonathan. Kate, you have a comment?
Yes, I mean, I will wholeheartedly agree with Trustee Abboud on this. I strongly believe that this was a flaw in Proposition 13 from the start. I believe that we have a responsibility to our students and to our employees to take action on this. And my hope is that we can come forward with a resolution of support at our next meeting.
Dr. Haslam.
See this as a corrective measure. I was around when Howard Jarvis made his move, and I honestly don't think he ever contemplated including these business operations in Proposition 13. So I fully support the notion of Proposition 13, and will certainly vote for it, and will be happy to participate in the drafting of a resolution, so long as Jonathan writes it.
Yeah, I will do it. I'll adapt locally passed ones into one for us.
Thank you. Trustee Gallardo.
Thank you, Robert. There's a lot of good things about Proposition 15. And certainly everybody wants to impact student learning and get better classrooms and resources for our schools. you know, I did a lot of research on this. I didn't get to watch the PPIC webinar yesterday, but I think probably a couple of you got to watch it. And just even reading the mailer that came in this week, it doesn't seem like it captures fully everything that we need. And I just don't know that this is the right time to do this. And it's easy to, you know, be persuaded by, oh, it's going to help schools. And trust me, I've spent over a decade in the classroom, and I'm a parent. And so I have never had a classroom aide. I've never had curriculum. Everything that I have, it's been given to me by local foundations and parents and donors. So it's difficult. And I think that, you know, we pass bonds and we pass these things that tug at our hearts for students and for children. And when I read this proposition, I want to get behind it and say, yes, absolutely. I just think that it's missing a couple things. And if rewritten, I think it would be something that I think the community can get behind. But as it's written, it doesn't hit all the right places right now. And I also think that our economy is still in a sort of, you know, shaky place, and we have to not say that this is a no. For me, it's like a not now. Like, it doesn't make sense to do this right now, especially as it's written. And I think that if we really want to get behind schools, I think that there's a lot of things that we can do in Sacramento to really look at things comprehensively, so that every kindergarten teacher has an aide, that we have addressing the literacy needs of K2 in all of California. And so here locally, we haven't been able to address the literacy needs of K2 kids, which directly affect community colleges. We haven't been able to provide some of those services. And so that part of, oh, it's going to support schools, I would love to get behind that. But I've been a teacher, I've been in the classroom for a decade, and I know what I've had to do, and there is zero money coming in to support the critical needs of children, and especially children at risk for literacy, you know, development delays that directly correlate the trajectory of, you know, further success with, you know, college, career, technical education, and CTE. So I'm not there yet, and it's not something that that I think that I can encourage other people to support. I cannot encourage other parents or myself as a classroom teacher to say that, oh, this is going to benefit me. Unfortunately, in a decade, it has not benefited my children. And if anything, I pay to foundations myself, and as a teacher, I contribute. So I think that if this goes to the voters will decide ultimately, but I think that we can do better. We can really do better and write something that is specifically for schools and community colleges in that K-14 pipeline.
Marcia.
I just wanted to say that I do support a resolution in favor of Prop 15, and thank you to Jonathan to take the lead in drafting something.
Craig Nielsen.
Yeah, I'll be really pretty brief. I've been watching this all along, and I'm of the opinion that a lot of this money is not going to go to the problems that could be solved by where they think most of the money is going to go. And as it went along, they kept exempting this and exempting that because it was reasonable to get enough people to support it. And the last few articles about it I read recently were that if they weren't pushing to get it on the agenda this year, on the ballot this year, they would have made further exemptions and some changes. And I was also looking for like when I looked at it, I was looking for some like restructuring, like some restrictions on the use of the money. Right now, a huge percentage of that money is going to be used by city and county governments, and as well as schools and colleges to pay STRS and PERS, which is, you know, not doing well. I don't want to just hang up on just STRS and PERS, but if the money was really supposed to go in just a certain place, and the tax burden was spread a little more than it is, because there's repercussions when you when you do this, when you level these kind of taxes on a certain small group of businesses, no matter how large they are, they're still, you're doing it on a few businesses, it's not even. So it's going to result in restructuring in the business world. Maybe it'll be good, maybe it'll be bad. I don't know, but it's definitely going to cause disruption and change. Right now, what we need is an economy that bounces back and comes back. And to do that, for businesses to succeed and come back and get our tax revenues back where they were instead of where they're falling to, we need the businesses need consistency, not a lot of fluctuation. This is not the right time to do this, and it hasn't been finished. Therefore, I personally won't sign a resolution for it. And maybe my mind could be changed in the next few days, but I've just given you my input. And those are what I've stated is just some of the reasons why, it's only 50-50.
I once heard Warren Buffett say that he, in 1978, owned an oceanfront large house in Laguna Beach. And his property taxes have not, as a result of Proposition 13, his property taxes have not changed since 1978. And he said, therefore, the property taxes that he pays on his multi-million dollar house in Laguna Beach is less than what his secretary pays for her modest home in Omaha. So
I know that story well.
There's something
a real exception to the general rule.
There's
not everybody.
There's something out of whack with the property tax structure that has that result. Proposition 15 doesn't affect residential property taxes, but instead goes after commercial property taxes for those properties that are more than $3 million.
And that means it only affects people.
Excuse me, Craig. I haven't said, Craig. So
okay.
I think that's a reasonable way of doing it. Now I'll let you talk, Craig, if you want to tell
I'll
me.
rebut that a little bit. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I didn't even want to address the issue, but it may not affect them now, but the changes will affect everybody. Prices will go up, things will happen, there's disruption in the economy. It will impede recovery from the recession we're in. It's not the time. And I think what I've stated are very valid points, and there's trade-offs everywhere. Nothing's perfect. So we can agree to disagree.
And with that, Craig, you got the last word.
Thank you.
Because we are, believe it or not, we said we were going to finish at 8 o'clock, and it's now, by my computer, 7:56. So I don't know whether we need another motion, because Veronica made a motion that we would adjourn at 8 o'clock, and it's now 7:56. If somebody thinks we need a motion, I'll hear it. But otherwise, I think we're done, and then we'll see everybody again on October 8th.
Thank you, Robert.
Okay, bye.
Mr. President, thank you for running a very tight meeting. I appreciate it. I'm not going to spend the entire 4 minutes saying that. It's just thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you to everybody. It was a
Good night, all.
good meeting.